Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Fear the Old Lore, where we get attacked by crows in our intros, and look at the different versions of text of Bloodborne, often comparing the English to the Japanese version of the game, occasionally the Korean as well, to get a more informed understanding of the game and the lore that is presented to us. Yesterday, we crashed on Laurence for a little bit and ended up not being able to kill him, so we went into the research hall, explored everything there, did the first two steps of Adeline's quest, so when we go back, we should be able to complete her quest to gain the Milkweed rune this run. We also fought the Living Failures and Maria of the Astral Clock Tower, so there's a lot of good lore in that location for sure. We did try to finish off with defeating Laurence, but then I came to the conclusion that even if we didn't do it, it could be to our advantage, because that way I could go ahead and farm some extra vermin offline to allow us to complete Valtr's questline, so that way we could take a look at the bucket lists or helmet lists version of Valtr and summon him for the Laurence fight. Uh, so before heading into Valtr, let's just go ahead and look at some of those vermin again before talking to him. So we do have 5. That is the requisite number to be able to complete his quest. So it says that this is a centipede-like creature discovered on successful hunts by League hunters. Vermin found hidden within filth are only seen by League Confederates and are the root of man's impurity. The League has assumed the task of finding and crushing all vermin. Perhaps there is some mercy in the madness. Those who wish to see vermin can, and those who choose to are provided with boundless purpose. So, we've talked about that quite a bit in the previous streams. The idea of being the root of man's impurity does get repeated a little bit in Dark Souls, where the human dregs come from the same kind of term that's used in Japanese, hito no yodomi, which does mean like the stagnation of man, and that idea of it being like stagnation could also tie into the idea of like a stagnant pool of water, allowing things to fall down to its bottom to form sediment. So that's probably where this idea of human dregs comes from, at least for Dark Souls 3. The fact that these vermin can be found in men as well as beasts is kind of interesting to consider for the lore. If they are truly the root of man's impurity or man's stagnation, they might have a role to play in transformation in general. And so these are all the kinds of things that we can consider being relevant in the mechanics of transformation in Bloodborne. So with that out of the way, we'll go ahead and talk to Valtr first, and then stamp out some of these vermin to progress his dialogue. Because I don't think you need to reload the area, because I'm pretty sure we did this last time as well. So, examining Valtr up close, he still does wear that constable garb, and he has the one-eyed bucket on his head, which we should be able to pick up in just a moment here.
Ah, how goes your hunt? Do not forget the League's mission: to cooperate with Confederates, find vermin, and stamp them out.
So that should be pretty straightforward. I don't think there's anything else to say, but let's go ahead and double check.
Ah, do not to cooperate.
Alright, so with that done, let's go ahead and stamp out one of these vermin and then talk to him again. That should advance his little quest right there. So welcome back to the stream, Sundry Saturn. It's always nice to see you again, and thanks for stopping by. Alright, there we go. So as you can see, the player actually does have a little kind of a 3D model to crush under the foot, and that is a kind of a centipede-esque creature, or one of the vermin that we just used right there. So that should change Valtr's dialogue right now.
Ah, very good. You've crushed some vermin. I'm the master of the League. I can see it in your eyes. I'm pleased. This makes you a true fellow of the League. A Confederate. Now, take this stuff. A a symbol of our oath, of our blood-drenched fate.
So from a Valtr, we do gain the League Staff and the League Oath gesture.
You will be welcomed as a true Confederate. Go forth with renewed vigor. In short time, you will see how the mission takes hold of one's spirits.
So his last little bit of dialogue about there, in short time you'll see how the mission takes hold of one's spirits, isn't really in the Japanese, at least for this section. It's just more along the lines of and so you will like have fun doing it, and the league recognizes you at last. So that is a little bit of a. I think that's actually kind of a nice touch in the English. It makes the league sound a bit more intense and perhaps a little bit more zealous in completing its mission. So that's a kind of a change that I don't mind seeing, because it doesn't alter things too much, I think.
You will be welcomed as a true Confederate. Go forth with renewed vigor. In short time, you will see how the mission takes hold of one's spirits.
Alright, so that'll be that for now, and then we can go ahead and stamp a couple more vermin. I'm not sure how many it is for unlocking the next set of his dialogue, so probably just do one at a time. I think it's he changes at 2 and then 5, but I could be wrong about that.
Hello, Confederate. Has your stomach not turned at the world of man? So wondrously wretched, and brimming with unsightly vermin, much like our very own mission.
And so Valtr's laugh right there is pretty unsettling. That's something that you'd find very commonly on like the Blood Drunk Hunters. When we encounter Adeline, she gives that kind of sinister laugh. When we encounter the false give off that sinister laugh as well, especially when you are like towards the end of her quest line and she is going mad. Not so much when she like is in that kind of birthing position in which she has the cord, but when you choose to fight her, or when she asks you to send NPCs to her to more or less become her victims. Before I forget, looking at his dialogue, it does interest me that he says that he can tell that we've crushed vermin by looking into our eyes. So whether or not there is like a kind of a spiritual sign that's left on the hunter after they've crushed vermin is pretty different as far as like some of the mechanics go, especially since his helmet does say that Valtr lost the ability to see vermin long ago. I do think that might tie into his last set of dialogue that we just looked at right here, where he says, has your stomach not turned at the world of man so wondrously wretched and brimming with unsightly vermin? The Japanese for that I think is just a bit stronger, where he says like the world of man is impure and magnificent, covered in vermin everywhere. And so I would even say like my English translation of that might come a little bit short of how it's kind of reinforced in Japanese. He says dokomo kashukomo mushi darake da, and so that's like just very emphasized and repeated. I mean, not exactly repeated, but I just can't think of the proper word to just kind of go with it. Just emphasized really strongly, I suppose. So yeah, that does make me wonder whether or not part of the reason why he's lost the ability to see vermin is because he sees like the entire world as being covered with vermin, and so therefore he can't distinguish what's vermin from what's not any longer. But that is a bit more of like my personal interpretation on that, that you guys don't necessarily have to follow. And there is certainly wiggle room in the dialogue to kind of make that interpretation not seem very grounded either. So just want to be very clear about that. And so I don't think you'll have anything to say right now until we crush at least 3 more vermin. So
hello, Confederate. Turn mud.
Alright. So we're gonna zoom out and crush another one. I should actually probably just... This would probably be smarter. Alright, so let's turn the HUD back off for that extra cinematic quality.
Hello, Confederate. Turn much. Hello, Confederate. Turn.
And so this one should just be the last one for now.
Hello, Confederate. Your eyes say all. You've crushed vermin time and time again. You've seen the filth that varnishes the world of man. Yet, you are unbroken. You've the eyes of a hunter. You have blessed the League with your presence. This was my last, most pressing task. My Confederate, promise me you'll crush all vermin to rid us of our impurities for the sake of our fellows, all blood-stained hunters of the League. My Confederate, promise me you'll for the sake of our fellows.
So I thought that should have been it. Maybe we need more vermin, or maybe we just have to go ahead and reload this area. So I'm going to go ahead and bold Hunter's Mark, and then I think he'll be gone, and then we might be able to get his helmet. So I think we should have been able to see like the extra hunter NPC like somewhere hidden up on these trees. I just never remember exactly where he is. But he might have cost us once we completely finish this quest line. And so Valtr is gone now. And we do pick up that Master's Iron Helm, which should be by the Confederate set, or not Confederate set, but the Constable set. And I think I've skipped it. Okay, here we go. And I'll go ahead and pull up the normal iron one instead, or as well, to look at, just to compare the two. Not that you can get like both on one playthrough, you would need to do multiple ones, so it's a little bit beyond our capability right this moment, but I do think that I have it on another character. Oh, wait, no I don't, because I would have done this quest, and I had to reload my saves. Alright, so anyway. Before looking at the Master's Iron Helm, I will read the one-eyed Iron Helm, the version that you would get if you were to attack Valtr and kill him to steal it. So this is the one-eyed Iron Helm. It's an iron helm resembling an upside-down bucket. A single hole allows one to peek out with a single eye, which is probably all that its original owner had. And so the Japanese for that is fairly similar. It says it's a steel helmet resembling an upside-down bucket. Perhaps its original owner may have been like that, one-eyed only, and opened a peephole. So for the most part, they're the same. Both languages do make it sound more like it's a hypothetical information. It doesn't have like the full-on fact-based viewpoint that you get with the normal kind of a limited omniscient narrator for these item descriptions. So while it says that the owner might have been that way, we will find out when we summon Valtr for the Laurence fight that it is not strictly true. And so, going back to this description right here of the Master's Iron Helm, it says it's an iron helm resembling an upside-down bucket. A single hole allows one to peek out with a single eye, which is probably all that its original owner had. The Iron Helm is passed down among Masters of the League. Valtr had in fact lost the ability to see vermin long ago. And so, that does tie into what I was talking about with him not being able to see vermin, and it being interesting that he can see that the players crushed vermin by the looks in our eyes. As far as the Japanese for this dialogue goes, it's pretty. For this description goes, it's pretty similar. It says, as a symbol of the leadership of the League passing from generation to generation, Valtr had already become unable to see vermin for a long time. So there is no kind of a hidden revelation in Japanese. One aspect about this description of both languages is that only in the Master's Iron Helm description is it stated that it's passed down amongst the Masters of the League, or passed from generation to generation. So if we did kill Valtr beforehand and only got that one-eyed Iron Helm, perhaps this item had never actually been passed down from generation to generation. So to me, this does reinforce that Valtr, as the Beast Eater, was most likely like the original founder of the League and the League Oathrune, and only by completing his questline does it get passed and we become the second head of this organization. So that's pretty much it for this item right here. So we're actually just going to go back outside. And Sundry Saturn asks, why do we become Master of the League? He just wanted to retire. That's actually a really good question. It might be because he sees that he's going mad, and so it becomes more pressing upon him to find a kind of successor who will continue along in his unending hunt. Because if it is an unending hunt and does provide the League with boundless purpose, it would only be natural for him to be unable to fulfill it, at least by himself. So if he's able to have a kind of successor, or more specifically, the kind of a hunter who can quote-unquote inherit the onus of the League to crush all vermin underfoot, that would probably be the only way where they could maybe not even like come close to completing their mission, but the only way that they could ensure that their mission wouldn't be forgotten, and so that everything that they've done wouldn't be in vain. Although, yeah, it's just kind of one of those weird eccentricities of the game, I think. But that is a really good question. If he did want to retire, it is a little bit interesting that we can still summon him for like the Laurence fight and the Ludwig fight, especially since he is given not quite like a full-on different model, but at least a different nameplate for when we summon him. And for some reason, some people think that that Valtr Beast Eater that we summon is an earlier version of him. I just couldn't really fathom that for myself. Like, you only get that when you do complete the quest line here. If you kill Valtr, you can't summon him anymore, so it just doesn't make a ton of sense to me that we'd be summoning a Valtr from the past before he potentially became the Master of the League. It would make sense that Valtr is no longer the Master of the League when we complete his quest and inherit his Iron Helmet here, because that title should have been passed on to the player. So when we summon him, that is most likely why he's no longer called Valtr, Master of the League, in my opinion at least. But just beware that others do have differing beliefs on that subject, I suppose. So thank you for that question. And now that one hunter, which I didn't look for too much, should be here. This is the most likely the younger Madaras twin, because the old one should have been killed by this guy. Oh, he's too close to me. Oh, that's... Oh, I thought he was about to get me. That's the kind of snake that they can summon with the Madaras whistle. And so he is another League Confederate. We actually summoned him for the Ludwig fight for a change, which is kind of cool. And so a lot of people wonder why he suddenly aggroed towards the player. We don't have a ton of information about him, extremely little as a matter of fact. And so it could be that he's just filled with jealousy that Valtr entrusted us to be the the second in command, or the next leader of the league, because presumably he was a member long before us, and so we might have just kind of skipped the queue in this character's mind. But yeah, it's not explained very well at all. And after we do kill this little hunter guy, we can get that Madaras whistle to be able to summon that giant snake as well. We'll be looking at that in just a moment. Oh, I didn't even know it had a fire paper on him. Alright, so we auto-loot the Madaras whistle, which is pretty cool. Maybe because you might be able to like kite him off the bridge or into the elevator and insta-kill him, so that's kind of nice. So Sundry says thanks for answering. You're most welcome, for sure. So let's go ahead and look at that item. It is another kind of a hunter tool, and so it does go into the consumable section of the inventory. So this is the Madaras whistle of the Madaras twins, denizens of the Forbidden Woods. The twins grew alongside a poisonous snake and developed a silent, inhuman kinship. The poisonous snake grew uncontrollably, raised on a healthy diet of beast entrails. Even after their deaths, it is said to respond to the call of the twins' whistle from within the nightmare. So I would say that the English description of this does get a few things wrong. I'll just go ahead and read my full Japanese translation of this, and then talk about the differences after that. So it's the whistle of the Madaras twins, residents of the Forbidden Forest. Without using words, the twins grew alongside a poisonous snake and may be connected by bonds of inhuman friendship. The poisonous snake grew up unbelievably, feeding on dissected beasts. Even after its death, it's said to respond to the twins' whistle from within the nightmare. So, as you can see, the Japanese version of this is a lot clearer, and then it says that the snake is the one that is dead, and the snake responds to the twins' whistle from within the nightmare. So, when we do use this Madaras whistle, or when the twins use it, we are summoning the kind of undead snake from the nightmares themselves, which does tie into what I've been saying for like this entire playthrough, in that it's most likely the nightmares and the dreams kind of represent a form of an afterlife for the world of Bloodborne. And so how the mechanics of that works is a little bit unclear, but at least with this we do get that idea that the snakes themselves might be able to kind of move in between dimensions. That might give us a kind of a clue as to how the Shadows of Yharnam, the bosses that we encounter, were infected by those kind of parasitic snakes, because they kind of seem to be spectrally types of enemies that we would more typically associate with the nightmare in general. We can encounter some more of them in the Nightmare of Mensis right before Murgo's Loft and Queen Yharnam herself. So whether or not snakes can kind of persist after death or continue to exist in the nightmare is a bit of a mystery worth wondering about. We don't really see snakes in the nightmare, but we do see like some of the hateful maggots, which are like another kind of parasitic creature. There is probably that kind of tie between them. In general folklore and myth, snakes are kind of representative of rebirth and cycles, because they're also often associated with the moon, because they will like shed their skin and kind of like be born anew in a similar fashion to how like the moon will shed its faces with the phases of the moon. So they are quite often interconnected, and so like even in like Christianity, we've got the kind of a serpent as not only like a symbol for the devil, but that kind of a metaphorical rebirth, in that like Adam and Eve are cast out of the Garden of Eden and more or less reborn as kind of mortal men and forced to wander the earth afterward. So it is something that is a bit transcendent across cultures. And so with that all out of the way, this does conclude what we are coming to do in the Forbidden Woods, so we'll go back into the Hunter's Nightmare and hopefully dispatch Laurence without too many issues. And Sundry Saturn says the Ouroboros, which is another very, very good kind of emblem or symbol of like death and rebirth, because it's two snakes kind of intertwined with each other, eating each other's tails. So as they continue to feast on each other, they continue to both grow and die by the other snake eating its partners, for lack of a better word. Dark Moon asks, would I consider doing a Souls playthrough? That's a pretty good question. I mean, quite honestly, I really don't like Dark Souls 2, so I honestly really wish I did like Dark Souls 2 better, but I haven't been able to complete the game completely myself. Like I got to about like level 60 each time and killed different bosses each time, and I just couldn't really find the motivation to keep playing, unfortunately. I did replay Dark Souls 1 recently, and I do like that one a lot. I also like the combat of 3 quite a bit, but as far as like doing like these kind of lore throughs, I'm most certainly not nearly as versed in the kind of Dark Souls lore as I am in Bloodborne. Um, but if you are interested, I do know quite a few people that are very, very knowledgeable about Dark Souls lore, and I can provide you a pretty good Discord server if you're interested in talking about like Dark Souls lore. Um, you can just like look up the New Sunlight, I think, on like Discords, and you should be able to find it. There's a pretty good group of people there. A little bit, um, how shall I say, put it, like temperamental at times. Not necessarily in the bad way, but it definitely does have its own kind of a group dynamic that takes a little bit of a adjustment to get used to, I think.
Welcome. What is?
I shouldn't have enough
Very well,
echoes to level up right now, though. Okay, yeah, very, very few. So yeah, if I knew more about the Dark Souls lore, I would consider it more seriously. But at this point, I think I would decline. And if I did ever at some point, it would probably be after I did a very, very extensive look into the Japanese of the games to kind of make these kind of comparisons. But yeah, I just don't think I have like the patience, or quite frankly, that I'm entertaining enough to do like full-on Dark Souls playthroughs and streaming those. I do like to typically play these games a little bit slower, and I don't know. I thank you for the question, though. I'll consider it more in the future. I'm a lot more comfortable with Bloodborne overall, and I am more interested in continuing to produce Bloodborne-related content for the near future, at least. So, on my Discord, I did just kind of upload a potential first draft for a video essay that I want to upload to YouTube later on. But hopefully that'll be coming out somewhat soon in the near future. I need to go through all the footage and actually learn how to edit some videos to make that come together, though. Alright, so now we are going back into the Hunter's Nightmare to deal with Laurence. And by deal with Laurence, I really mean hopefully just not die, because we've been having that kind of issue so far. Oh shit, it lived. Okay. So normally I'd leave that guy be, but I'm trying to get a decent look at the summon over here without much interruption. So as we can see, these guys are holding up that old hunter bell, as I pointed out before, but we couldn't see it very well. I do like how the messenger at the very bottom there has its hand held up to its ear as though it's trying to listen for the resonance of another bell. Just kind of comical to me. And so that just said summon Valtr, the Beast Eater. And as Valtr does get summoned, he does do that little gesture, the League one that we just obtained. And I guess I need to turn the HUD on, but as you can see, he's no longer wearing that bucket. Rather than only having the one eye, like the one, or as the descriptions might imply, we can very, very clearly see that he has two. They both seem to be functional. His face isn't distorted like some of the other Yarnamites that we've seen so far. So let's go ahead and turn the HUD back on to see that he's called Confederate Valtr Beast Eater. So with that, we should be able to deal with Laurence. And I may as well talk about Laurence again as though I hadn't before, but bear with me. So Darkman says, you see what I mean? You're not really a fan of Dark Souls 2 either. You love the lore behind Dark Souls 1. What would be the plan for future Bloodborne videos? And then Sundry says, although Valtr is from out of town. Yeah, everybody seems to be from out of town to a certain extent. Maybe not German, but or Maria. Well, although I guess Maria's from Caners, but there's certainly a huge trend for the hunters to be foreigners. So going back to Darkmoon's question, my plan for some of the Bloodborne videos is I'm thinking for the very first video to have it be centered on the Cleric Beast and going over elements of its visual design and like some things like pertaining to the left-hand path and parts of its identity, because those are some things that we don't really get to see too often. And after that, I want to look at maybe a few of the other bosses just to give like some pretty concise looks at some of the enemy designs. And then I want to get into a lot more of the more significant differences in English and Japanese, I think. Because that's kind of my forte, and something that many other people can't show off, for better or worse. I would like there to be a bit more accurate information about the lore of Bloodborne out there in general. So that's its grab attack right there. Looks like I missed Valtr. So it should be phasing soon, and I guess I haven't talked about it at all, which is okay. So as we were talking about the last half hour that we crashed on Laurence, he was the first vicar of the Healing Church. He shares the same form as a cleric beast, which is most likely stolen from like common media depictions of Wendigo, like an Algonquin Native American folk monster. Good. And he's kind of consumed with this fire, which could have shown like his burning will and ambition. I don't remember what I said like my last lore through about it, but there is like kind of some Buddhist principles that are associated with like having a burning will and desire, and if you're too attached to like the world, that might cause you to become like consumed in the afterlife with this kind of a burning passion. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, like that could help explain why Laurence is depicted this way. I'm not sure if I'm fully accurate right now. It has been a while since I looked at that. So the skull that we picked up earlier in like the research hall area, where Valtr's about to die, was good. Was potentially like a symbol of the oath of like Bergenworth and Master Willem's adage. That's the one that killed me. Okay. And for whatever reason, Laurence seems to be searching for that skull, potentially to like get his humanity back. Although the one description does say like it will never return to him, so that does kind of just reinforce that beasthood might not be recoverable. Alright, that should be it. Oh no. Okay. Not like this. Okay, jeez. Legit thought I was about to die right there. So Valtr put in the work that we needed to just kind of overcome Laurence. Definitely not how I like to normally go about these boss fights, but I'll take it if we're struggling this badly. And it is kind of nice to be able to show off the little lore aspect to the rest of Valtr's appearance and the final parts of the League quest. So going back to the chat, Sundry says you were going to add that the feedback about highlighting the Japanese text in the essays, even when a word is translated the same, there can be nuances that give a greater context. Yeah, and so that is one thing that I would like to focus on going forward into some of the lore videos. Like the Cleric Beast one is probably just more of an experimental kind of video. One to just kind of develop a style, whether that be through writing the kinds of video essays and developing the scripts and or learning a bit more about video essays. I don't expect it to be like my magnus opus by any means, but I do think one, it would be like a very good introduction to the kind of style that I'd like to incorporate into my videos moving forward, and it might help build a bit more traffic to the YouTube channel as I do start to head into like more focused topics. So those are my kind of current thoughts on it. So well, hopefully it'll work well moving forward, and people will enjoy what we put out as a community. Alright, so from defeating Laurence, we do gain a new rune, the Beast Embrace rune, which is one of the coolest items in the game. This does kind of allow the player to transform into the form of a beast themselves, although we seem to be able to control it, and we'll see that in just a moment as well. So this is another kind of a covenant rune. There's not a ton of them in the game, so looking at the description, it says that after repeated experiments in controlling the Scourge of Beasts, the Gentle Embrace rune was discovered. When its implementation failed, the Embrace became a forbidden rune, but this knowledge became a foundation of the Healing Church. Those who swear this oath take on a ghastly form and enjoy accentuated transformation effects, especially while wielding a beast weapon. So that's the final paragraph right there is a good indication that this rune is supposed to work most effectively with the beast claws that you can obtain from like one of the Thumerian Chalice dungeons. Not like literally the Thumerian Chalice ones. It's in one of the Eyes Chalice dungeons. Not Eyes, but the Loran ones. Off on one of the side areas. You can also purchase like I think the beast claw from the shop. I'm not sure that you need to have looted it from one of the chests first, or if you can just go ahead and get it from one of the like either messenger baths or the patches kind of shop in the Chalice dungeons. So one aspect about this rune which does interest me is when we looked at the beast rune earlier, the Japanese text did differ in by saying that it was the first Carol rune that was discovered, and this one, if it was found in Laurence, did it mean that the healing church was trying to control the beasthood of Laurence? Is that might have what allowed him to transform into a beast? There are kind of a lot of questions to really ask about how Laurence, the first vicar of the healing church, came to be in possession of this rune, and yeah, I'm not entirely sure what to make of it. I think the icon of it is a bit similar to the claw mark rune, which is right here, and the beast rune, obviously. Much more closely. So the fact that it's like kind of twisted the way that it is does also remind me a little bit of some of the metamorphosis runes. So maybe it's like a combination between like the metamorphosis and the beast rune. Might be the way that I would consider looking at it. Oh, I passed it, didn't I? Yeah, so the other thing that this rune icon does remind me of is like the living string, and I don't have that item on my character yet, so when we get it later on, hopefully I'll remember to show that off. Not that I think there's particularly a super strong connection between them, but that is just kind of one thing that it reminds me of. Going into the Japanese text for this rune itself, um, I think it's similar. Let me look at that final paragraph for sure. Yeah, okay, so for the most part, the translation of this is really good. So we're just going to go back to the dream and equip it to just kind of show it off. And then after that, we will head back into the Fishing Hamlet and geez, what's the word? Proceed from there. Oh, actually, we should go back to the research hall and deal with Adeline's quest. So equipping this, you can hear that kind of a transformation sound going along with it. Your helmet will be automatically covered. Oh, this is interesting. I guess it's TOS a little bit, but apparently you can completely remove the chest for the female characters when you're in this kind of beast transformation. So that's kind of cool. Let me go ahead and toggle off this little HUD. This does show that we are kind of transformed into the figure of a beast. I think these are somewhat similar to either like a cleric beast, since we've got the really big, really hairy left arm, or perhaps like an abhorrent beast, which is like the thing that the suspicious beggar transforms into. Obviously, we don't have like electricity coding ourselves, but this is the kind of a beast that open to the player from the Beast Embrace rune. Beyond that, it doesn't really have too many other effects without using the Beast Claw item. I don't think this one will change the character's dodge, but the Milkweed rune does, so I guess none of these really matter. That is just kind of one of the cooler things to show off in Bloodborne, and definitely one of the nicer additions to the DLC. The mechanics of it are also interesting to consider, because the only other NPC that we find that has a kind of a similar transformation would be the kind of a beast hunter over where Gilbert was in the equivalent location in the Hunter's Nightmare. The part that looks a bit more like Central Yarnum. That's the only other instance of that kind of enemy that we find. And so whether or not they had the Beast Embrace rune in them is also a matter of consideration. That Beast Hunter doesn't drop any beast-related items. It just drops the Oto Workshop badge. So, I don't think I actually showed off any of the items that we got from that badge, but Simon is now gone, so since we killed Maria, that shows that he's moved on to the Fishing Hamlet, and we'll encounter him a little bit later. So Adeline should be done now. I didn't mean to fire my weapon, but glad I didn't hit her.
Oh, hello. One last time. Will you fetch brain fluid just one last time? The murky, mushy fluid that will make me whole. The sticky sound whispers to me. So very close, right into my ear. My head, just a head. That's all there is. I need my baptism. Please, I beg of you. I want to be something. Please, give me brain fluid. The sticky sound whispers I need my baptism. Or perhaps I'm already brimming over.
Alright, so her dialogue for the most part is pretty close to what's in the Japanese. There is one discrepancy that I might want to highlight, although I don't exactly know the significance of this, to be quite honest. And when she says she needs her baptism, the Japanese is more like, that's why she needs a newborn's bath. And I tried to look into that. It's literally like the baby's first bath, or maybe it's bathwater. I don't exactly know what the implication of that is, but for whatever reason, it is like technically different from like the baptism, especially since that's like has like a more Christian related overtones, at least as far as the English is concerned. So I don't know if there's like some culture or context I'm missing as far as like understanding how a baby's first bath relates to Adeline. Maybe that just shows, of course, that she has reverted back into infancy, and that might also tie into the third ending. But beyond that, I really have no clue what the significance of that is. So, going back to that final line, she says, perhaps I'm already brimming over. This ties into what I was talking about on the last stream about the concept of overflowing from the inside. And the Japanese just says, oh, or could I be overflowing? And so that does get highlighted there. So in order to give Adeline that final amount of brain fluid that she needs, you need to strike her as well and absorb the brain fluid from within her to give it back to her. And so this is kind of a funny action to do, and I'll have a lot to say about that in just a moment.
Please, give me brain fluid. The sticky sound whispers I need my baptism. Or perhaps I'm already brimming over.
So I almost forgot to read that brain fluid description, so that would have been a little bit of a hamper in my plans. So this is a grayish amoeba-shaped brain fluid, wobbles and bounces, extracted from a patient whose head expanded until that was all that they were. We fail to realize our own latent potential until the moment it is lost and we sense its absence. Ironically, this is the very nature of insight, like the moment one licks one's own blood, only to be startled by its sweetness. This is, like, I think similar to the Japanese, but I do want to go ahead and read my translation just to kind of expand upon the point that I'll be making shortly here. So, being unaware of losing something inside and then realizing it, it's funny, but that's also the true nature of enlightenment, like licking one's own blood and being surprised at its sweetness. And so they're extremely close together. One of the reasons why I wanted to look at the Japanese version is just to highlight that uh, the insight set in Japanese is a bit closer to something a bit more literally taken as enlightenment. That being said, I do think that calling it insight was a brilliant translation. One, because when you look at the icon for insight, it is related to eyes. Two, just the general symbolism of eyes and sight and like inner sight all goes extremely well together with like concepts of third eyes and eyes on the inside. So that is probably like one of the best localization choices I think that they could have possibly made in this entire game, and so it's something I fully support, even though at times it can be a little bit of a sticky point, like when we're looking at the notes with Ram and how the insightful truth or the enlightening truth is being obscured to man. So just wanted to highlight that. And so going back to the description itself, I do really like this idea about not just like latent potential being lost or not realizing our own latent potential until it's lost, but also the idea of losing something on the inside. And that's that kind of revelation of losing something on the inside is like the kind of the point which you notice that you had it to begin with. So I think that kind of imagery is pretty much literally what we're doing right now by literally taking something from the inside of Adeline and giving it back to her. It allows her to realize what she lost and then what she had. So we're going to actually go ahead and give this brain fluid back to Adeline and allow her to gain a kind of a higher guidance. And so let's go ahead and look at that right now.
Please give me brain fluid. The sticky sound whispers I need my baptism. Or perhaps I'm already brimming over. I see a shape. My guide, I see your voice. Clearly as it bends and bleeds.
And then we finally do gain that Milkweed rune from our Adeline.
My own revelation. Just for me. Thank you for everything. Really, I used to be nothing.
So after completing that questline there, Adeline does seem to die, and she doesn't kind of reanimate despite us not attacking her further. This does kind of separate her from the other brain or the research hall patients that we've encountered so far. This might also tie into that one room that had a lot of the disembodied heads, some of which were already dead. So is that supposed to imply that they had private revelations of their own? I'm not entirely sure how to read that room. It's very interesting. I do wonder if, since like the living failures didn't have heads of their own, whether or not they were supposed to be related to those kind of disembodied heads in that room. I'm not entirely sure it matters, but this is kind of one of the more bizarre quest lines to follow and complete, and one of the coolest bits of lore for the research hall in general, and helping to understand like the mechanics of Transcension and Bloodborne overall. So with that being done, we are going to head back into what's it called, the Astral Clock Tower, and then from there we're going to head into the Fishing Hamlet. And once we get there, we'll go ahead, talk to the Fishing Hamlet priest before teleporting back into the Hunter's Dream to equip that Milkweed rune, and then talk to the priest again to kind of do its quest, if that's what you want to call it. So that's already been done. So I haven't this yet, so let's go ahead and take a look at that now. Maybe I did, I just don't remember. Oh, Celestial Dial. So this is a Celestial Dial that functions with the giant astral clock in the Grand Cathedral. When the dial is held up towards the astral clock, the clock will come to life and reveal a secret to its curious interloper. I'm pretty sure the Japanese on that was exactly the same. Oh, I guess it's slightly different. It just says it will guide, and so that idea of guidance in general is just a bit more reinforced. And same thing with a little bit of Adeline's dialogue. Towards the end, she thanks the player for guiding her more specifically, rather than just thanking the player for everything. So this whole idea of guidance is strongly reinforced throughout the research hall between Adeline, the Celestial Dial here, and even the little crow, which dropped the other tier of the guidance rune. So it does seem that the Healing Church was trying to research extraplanar guidance. So with that out of the way, before holding up the dial to the face of this clock, I do want to kind of show off that at the bottom of it we can very clearly see the deep sea rune depicted onto here. So clear deep sea, or just any of the deep sea runes. And all along the face of this, we can see the other Chaos runes as well. So that one is one of the lake runes, and it gets a little bit harder to make out from this point. Someone on Reddit, or just like on Google Images, did go ahead and like show off all of them that we can see so far, and they're pretty cool to look at, and I do like how they were incorporated into the lore of Bloodborne beyond just like these kind of esoteric runes. So it does show that the Healing Church probably did have a kind of a, maybe not like complete knowledge of them, but they were certainly aware of most of them. But with that done, let's go ahead and hold up the Celestial Dial to reveal the cosmos in the sky.
Blasphemous murderers, blood-crazed fiends. Atonement for the wretches by the wrath of Mother Kos. Mercy for the poor wizened child. Mercy. Oh, please. release. Atonement for the wretches. Lay the curse of blood upon them and their children, and their children's children forevermore. Each wretched birth will plunge each child into a lifetime of misery. Mercy for the poor wizened child. Let the pungence of Kos cling like a mother's devotion.
So, this does grant us access into the Fishing Hamlet, and from here, we do encounter that Fishing Hamlet priest, which has a lot of very insightful information as to the nature of what happened in this village here, and reveals to us that it was Bergenworth, or like the followers of Bergenworth, who came into the hamlet already in a kind of a blood-fueled craze. And so we do gain some like madman's knowledges from the corpses here. There's some more lead elixirs as well. I think these ones are actually a little bit different, so they almost seem to be like not necessarily fish people, but kind of more like mummies compared to a lot of the other corpses that we've encountered so far. Before I forget, at the base of like the astral clock tower face, there was like a small grave there that had a few flowers that looked to be like the kind of lumen flowers or the lumen wood flowers. And I think that's worth pointing out as far as like trying to help characterize Maria and to understand her motives in trying to protect the nightmare from the hunter. It seems as though she is trying to lay to rest the spirit of the Orphan of Kos, but she might be inadvertently kind of prolonging it and its grief, although she might think that that grief is kind of justified and wants to punish hunters and herself as a consequence of her actions in like the raid on the Fishing Hamlet. So coming out into the hamlet itself, when we do look around, we can see that there is a kind of entirely new Yharnam. Maybe not necessarily new Yharnam, but we can see the cityscape below us, and that relates to what we encountered in the Hunter's Nightmare when we were picking up like the whirligig saw. The snail woman fell from the sky and crashed right in front of us, and when we do look out over here, we still have that kind of same celestial disc. When we look out here, we can see these Fishing Hamlet masts, and they might be what's repeated in the Nightmare Frontier. And since while we were down in the Hunter's Nightmare, and when we were looking up to the sky, we couldn't see the Fishing Hamlet, and when we were obviously looking at the face of the clock tower, we couldn't see any kind of a land bridge from down below. This could imply that since we are able to see these fishing boat masts from the Nightmare Frontier, that it might also be just above us right now, but we cannot see it from this vantage point. And so this could be just a gigantic reference that all of the nightmares are layered on top of each other. So looking out, we do see like through the little sea right here, there is the Hunter's Nightmare below us and that version of Yharnam. So with all of that out of the way, let's die, I guess. I was going to go back to the Hunter's Dream and equip the Milkweed rune. So there is obviously like the kill floor there, and you don't want to fall off the little edge of the Fishing Hamlet. And once we go back to the dream and equip the Milkweed rune, and then come ahead and talk to the Hamlet priest again. I'll talk about his dialogue a little bit more at length. Then this will probably also be a good chance to look back at the messenger bath just to show what new items we got, maybe from the Otto Workshop badge, but I think it was just like the delayed Molotovs and the delayed rope Molotovs. Don't think it was too significant. I don't think there are any new weapons. I guess the Beast Cutter, although that might have been from us picking it up. And we also can purchase another Holy Moonlight Sword, now that we've looted it from Ludwig himself. And so, yeah, everything is probably just related to picking it up. If not, we do have the Boom Hammer and the Whirligig Saw available for purchase now. So is the Piercing Rifle. I actually don't think we've read this yet. So this is a rifle engineered by the Otto Workshop, the precursor to the workshop of the heretical powder kegs. Designed for hunting on narrow streets, this rifle has been optimized to cause perforation wounds, but is unfit for reliably countering attacks. I've actually never really used this to know if you can or cannot continue to parry enemies with it. And I don't think it's probably that good just because it's more or less outclassed by the Adeline, but I should take another look at this sometime. Going off the Japanese, it's pretty similar. Okay, so not too much going on there. And I think I read the Gatling gun when we picked it up. No, maybe I didn't, so forgive me for that. So this is a highly customized portable version of the stationary Gatling gun operated by the old hunter Jura in Old Yarnum. It was the weapon of choice of the youngest of Jura's 3 companions. The Gatling boasts exceptional rapid-firing functionality, but is considered a cumbersome weapon due to its excessive weight and insatiable consumption of quicksilver bullets. So this is pretty cool that it does reveal that Jura had a 3rd companion, although I think we've only ever really seen one, the one in Old Yarnum himself. So maybe there's another one that we don't really know about. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. One interesting note about this description is, for whatever reason, this doesn't continue to call Jura the retired hunter. This does correctly identify him as the old hunter, likely because obviously this was included in the old hunter's DLC, whereas all of the other items related to Jura were just they called him retired hunter, probably thinking that the old in that context was more like a former hunter. So just a small inconsistency on the English's part. And okay, so that should be it, I think, unless we get another item set, or armor set rather, and we don't. So that's all with the Otto Workshop, and then we'll go ahead and equip that Milkweed rune and examine it here. So this is the final kind of Covenant rune, I think, since we're not going to get like the Hunter of Hunter rune, since we didn't completely fulfill Eileen's questline on this playthrough. Oh, I guess there's the Radiance one from Alfred, so there's 6 total. And so this would typically be like the last one to pick up unless you did Laurence later. So this is the Milkweed rune. Host Phantasms is a Lumenwood. That's what the quick description says. It's a Kara rune envisioned by Adeline, patient of the research hall. A transcription of the inhumane, sticky whispers that reveal the nature of a celestial attendant. Those who take this oath become a Lumenwood that peers towards the sky, feeding phantasms in its luscious bed. Phantasms guide us and lead to further discoveries. So as far as the name of this goes, I'm not entirely sure where they got Milkweed from. In Japanese, it's Nae Doko, which means like a seedbed or a nursery. So, for instance, in Dark Souls 1, when you fight the Bed of Chaos, it uses the same kanji, so it's like Naedoko, so it's like the seedbed of chaos. It's the nursery of chaos, so like I suppose chaos sprouts from that boss, like the Witch of Izalith or whatever remains of her. And so, as far as like what that really means is, it's a kind of like a almost like a I don't want to say it's necessarily like a potted plant, but the idea is similar, where you take a bit of soil and you encapsulate it to be isolated from the elements and from like vermin and bugs and pests, so that way it will be able to flourish on its own. So I think in a bit more of like a liberal translation, I would call this like the vessel rune, because it more or less transforms the player into a kind of vessel for life, and more specifically a vessel for the phantasms inside it. So Q, welcome to the chat. It's always nice to see you in here. For everyone who doesn't know, Q is another streamer. He's a really positive guy. I always enjoy the energy that he puts out there. So he streams a lot of different stuff than I do. He does like a lot of the more survival kind of games, like 7 Days to Die, Call of Duty Zombies. So if you want to learn more about him, I do suggest giving him a follow. He's a really cool guy. So thanks again for showing up, and thank you for the compliment. I appreciate that. So yeah, going back to the Carol rune description here with the vessel or the Milkweed rune. One idea as to why they might have called this the Milkweed rune is they may have received like a kind of developer note to state that if like Ebriatus is named after like a specific genus of a butterfly, the milkweed in real life is a kind of a flower that like emperor butterflies and other types of butterflies are really fond of for like eating and giving them nourishment. So that might have been their inspiration for naming it this. I don't really know how they came to that conclusion though, just looking at the raw Japanese. And yes, no problem at all, Q. And so I did want to at least talk about the name most specifically on this. Going back to the description itself, it does mention that for whatever reason this transforms the player into a lumen wood, and so that's kind of interesting to consider, because when we do equip this rune on the player ourselves, we don't necessarily resemble what we find in the Lumenwood Garden or like the Lumen Flower Garden, so I'll show that off in just a moment. And hold on, let me look at the Japanese on this. So this also continues the idea of calling them like star flowers in Japanese, so it is a little bit consistent in that regard. And the last line about the phantasms guide us and they might lead us to further discoveries. That's kind of interesting when we consider that this came from Adeline, and so this is kind of her private guidance. So the idea of guidance being related to phantasms in general might tie back into what we found with Ludwig and the way that he obtained his guidance rune from his Holy Moonlight Sword. When we tie that back to the idea of the kind of a thread of white light which he saw, and how the sword description mentions that he saw tiny dancing sprites, that might allude to something that phantasms do on the inside of people. So if they are kind of sprites or something similar to like dancing spirits, I think that could tie into what was going on with like Adeline hearing that kind of sticky sound. So for whatever reason, there is a kind of crossover between both like sight and sound when trying to envision these carol runes. So just a lot of cool stuff to consider altogether. How the supernatural gets related to both sight and sound in the form of carol runes and phantasms potentially. So let's go ahead and equip this and go back and talk to the Fishing Hamlet priest. So at this point, I'm going to go back to the clock tower first to just show off that little grave that I was talking about a little bit more clearly, and then we'll talk to the Hamlet priest and look at his dialogue in more detail. So we are back at the clock tower, and I guess I should have pointed out, like, I do have like a kind of broccoli or cauliflower looking kind of head. I don't. Oh yeah, this is why I wanted to come back over here, just to compare us to the lumen wood over here. So as you can see, even though I am stated to be in the form of a lumen wood myself, I don't have a lot of outward resemblance to what we can see going on in this kind of garden over here. So maybe I can pin the camera more closely onto me from this. So I mean, it's I can't even say it's kind of similar, honestly. Like, I really don't think there's a lot of a visual overlap between what we get on the character and what we see in this garden over here. However, one other thing that I did want to point out is when we are up here in the Lumenwood Garden, when we look out back over Yarnum, there does seem to be a kind of beginnings of the kind of sea that we can see, like covering the nightmare, Hunter's Nightmare version of Yarnum down there. Another cool part about coming up here to the Lumenwood Garden is when we do look out towards that direction, we can see the other Grand Cathedral over there and its little astral clock tower as well. So there is some overlap. That portion of the Hunter's Nightmare really does not have a lot of the sea covering it. And we can also see the little lumen flower gardens down below. So I don't think many people have noticed this little sea-like area over here, so it's kind of fun to point out that even if it is just kind of a fog, it does end up kind of resembling the sea. So we still get that pool of blood where Maria was, and this is the kind of a little memorial grave. As we can see, it does look like it's covered with the kind of lumen flowers that we just saw a moment ago, and it is probably a kind of a ceremonial or like a memorial type of coffin, and probably doesn't have a real body in it, although maybe the waking world equivalent would have the real corpse of Maria. I'm not entirely sure what to make of that. And then once we do activate that the celestial dial, we will no longer be able to see those Carol runes, which is why I went ahead and showed them off when I did. So I do think that grave is supposed to more or less be for the entirety of the Fishing Hamlet. And with that in mind, let's go ahead and talk to the Fishing Hamlet priest again to kind of more or less finish Adeline's quest and get a really dark item and one of the, if not like the coolest lore item for the DLC.
Blasphemous murders, blood-crazed fiends. Atonement for the wretches by the wrath of Mother Kos. Mercy for the poor wizened child. Mercy. Oh, please. Curse here, curse there. A curse for he and she. Why care? A bottomless curse, a bottomless sea. Source of all greatness, all things that be. Listen for the baneful chants. Weep with them as one in trance. And weep with us. Oh, weep with us.
So from that priest, we do gain a new item, the Accursed brew. I'll look at that very shortly. And just to kind of look at his visual design overall, I think this might be similar to the kind of warped statues that we find in the Upper Cathedral Ward. he will kind of continue his little cursing of the people of Bergenworth, which can be a little bit annoying at times. Interestingly enough, he is also kind of immortal. If you choose to attack him, he will not become aggressive towards the player. You cannot fully kill him. I think it's possible to eventually knock him off the edge of the map, and that would be the only way to do it. But if you do completely deplete his health, he'll just kind of stagger for a moment and then continue to walk on as though nothing really happened. So that's pretty much that for now. I'm going to go away from him so he stops talking over the player, and I'll go ahead and look over that Accursed brew and his dialogue after we hideous looking broccoli head. We can use this Milkweed rune later on to work in conjunction with the Kos parasite, which gives us access to a different kind of weapon. It does alter the player's dodge. I don't think it does in this form until we equip the Kos parasite, so for right now it just only has like a cosmetic effect rather than anything substantial. I guess it does increase item discovery slightly, but it's fairly insignificant, since the only items that we really need are fixed drops in fixed locations. Let's go back to the Fishing Hamlet and then look at that that Accursed brew description. So this is another hunter tool, and it's definitely one of the more grotesque ones in the game. Accursed brew. Skull of a local from the violated fishing village. The inside of the skull was forcibly searched for eyes, as evidenced by innumerable scratches and indentations. No wonder the skull became stewed in curses. They who offer baneful chants weep with them as one in trance. So, there are some differences in the Japanese for this. I don't think the name is too important, even though it's a little bit different. It's more like the gathered curse or like an accumulated curse. And so I don't know where they get like the idea of the brew from. Maybe it has more of a definition that I'm a bit more unfamiliar with in English, but it's just like an accumulated curse, I suppose. It says that it's the skull of a trampled fisherman's village. It's probable the skull's insides may have been searched for eyes. There are countless signs of mistreatment, and so the skull gathered curses. Cursed ones, cry together with them. And so, for the most part, it's extremely similar, but I think the important bit is just about this shows that the School of Bergenworth had people who searched the skulls of the Fishing Hamlet residents for eyes on the inside. That becomes very pertinent in understanding what happened to the Fishing Hamlet and why the priest in particular was cursing those of Bergenworth. And this item is extremely easy to miss, but it has some of the most important lore for the DLC, quite frankly. So it's really important to grab and to look at everything through this lens. Going back to the Fishing Hamlet priest dialogue, I honestly like what they did with the localization in terms of making it a kind of like a prayer or a chant, putting it into meter and making it like a poem. It really makes it have a nice ring, and it makes it feel more antiquated and literary and something that you'd expect to find in like H.P. Lovecraft's work or just cosmic horror in general. So it's definitely a nice touch that the translators put on the game right here. Going into the content of it itself, I'll go ahead and just look at some things side by side. When he talks about what is it? Atonement for the wretches, lay the curse of blood upon them and the children's children forevermore. That's really good right there. The Japanese is extremely similar. It says that may there be an eternal curse on the blood of their children's children and all their children forevermore. And then he says, each wretched birth will plunge each child into a lifetime of mystery. Then he begins coughing. And then for the Japanese, it's close to, may they be born haplessly, a life of unsolicited despair, which I think is a little bit stronger in the Japanese, and I like. And he says, mercy for the poor wizened child, let the pungence of Kos cling like a mother's devotion. He says in Japanese, salvation for the pitiful wizened infant, may the acrid stench of Kos, a mother's love, finally reach them. So that's a little bit different. I don't know where they came with like the idea of it clinging like a mother's devotion. I guess it's more like the mother's love is what they're going with, the devotion on that portion. But going back to when he was talking about giving us the cursed brew, he says, curse here, curse there, a curse for he and she, why care, a bottomless curse, a bottomless sea, source of all greatness, all things that be. Part of that does get stated at the end of the fight with the Orphan of Kos, but I think this one is probably where it does differ from the Japanese a bit more. He says, cursed ones, however much you desire, it won't be enough. The curse and the ocean have no bottom, everything comes from it. Here, a curse. Please come wail beside them. Please come wail alongside us. And then he begins coughing. So I think that difference right there is probably like one of the most unfortunate ones for the DLC. Generally, the DLC was done very well in my opinion, but I do think failing to mention that however much you desire, it won't be enough should be important in trying to understand that the curse that he's laying on Bergenworth and those who followed them, the blood-crazed fiends, is probably like, no matter how much blood you have, it'll never be enough. And so this curse that he's inciting on behalf of Mother Kos is directed to the hunters in general, and I do think that this is probably related to the scourge of beasts and causing the hunters to become blood drunk in general, which is probably most relevant when we consider that like the eye of the blood drunk hunter is what causes the people to be sent into the hunter's nightmare. And so if for whatever reason like blood drunkenness itself is an extension of the curse of Kos, that'd be a kind of interesting take on things, because that doesn't necessarily mean that it will force people to transform into beasts. Like that could still be something inherent within humanity, but the whole mechanism of becoming blood drunk or maybe like fueled with rage could be more or less related to this curse. And so that is partially why I think like the curse of Kos is supposed to be associated with eyes, because when we do look back out into that kind of a celestial body in the sky of the hunter's nightmare, it does kind of resemble an eye, which I'm trying to show off.
Mercy for the poor.
Where is it? Is that on the other side?
Mercy. Oh, please.
So yeah, it's over there, and then once we do defeat Kos, like the mist gets kind of absorbed into the ocean and goes away. And so taking that idea and going back into what the Hamlet man says with a bottomless curse, a bottomless sea, source of all greatness, all things that be. In the Japanese, it's like the curse and the ocean have no bottom, everything comes from it. So I do like the English translation that it's a source of all greatness, all things that be, because that does line up that like the great ones themselves could have come from the sea, and because of that the sea is also accepting of everything from the great ones. And so if we do take this idea of the curse of Kos being related to like that kind of mist covering the sun-like presence in the sky, sorry, my dog's distracting me with damn it, what was I saying? With the mist, with the Orphan of Kos potentially being related to what's covering the celestial body over here. It will go away once we defeat the orphan and its black sprite. So that could just be a kind of representation of the Curse of Kos, perhaps on eyes in general. And I do think that imagery might tie into the Eye of the Blood-Drunk Hunter and its icon. So with all of that being said and done, I'll go ahead and go back to the Fishing Hamlet itself. When you look at these like little stacks of shells, these are kind of like a primitive like gravestones. I mean, obviously they're not gravestones, but that's what they are. They're kind of memorials for the dead. And so, one moment.
Blasphemous murders, blood-crazed fiends. Atonement for the wretches by the wrath of Mother Kos.
Alright.
Mercy for the poor wasn't blood.
And so he does keep repeating his dialogue. It's really annoying. I'll go ahead and show off, like trying to kill him doesn't do anything. When we do strike him, he does kind of bleed this myriad kind of blood. It's like purple, red, and white in different spots. So that is something repeated amongst all the kind of Hamlet residents. And Sundry says they're Cairns, which thank you for reminding me. I couldn't think of the word for them.
Mercy. Mercy.
So for the most part, it's silvery blood, and he just keeps repeating everything, and it does get a bit annoying and repetitive there, so we'll just go ahead and move on. So yeah, all these shells are stacked up as kind of cairns, and I pointed this out way long ago when we were in Hemmock Charnel Lane, but this corpse was originally like on one of the guillotines, and its asset gets reused over here. They're on these kind of canoes, so this just kind of reinforces imagery of this being a fishing hamlet and being tied to the sea, because there's so many canoes and fishermen. In some cultures, like fishermen would be like set adrift in sea once they died to kind of return their bodies to the ocean, and so that might be what that's trying to get along over there. When we come inside the fishing hamlet itself, we can see some corpses of whales here, which we can also find in some of the chalice dungeons, which is kind of interesting to consider, because there are certainly no oceans in the chalice dungeons themselves. So were they a kind of fishing or whaling people themselves? We don't really know. Could there have been a connection between Mother Kos and maybe some of the previous Thumerian civilizations? It's a possibility. In content videos, he did reveal that at least for some point they had considered making the Yarnum Stone relate to the Fishing Hamlet priest, that you could return the Yarnum Stone to him and it would be related to Mother Kos's child being stolen from her, but I mean, they didn't end up going with that, which is a bit mystifying, just because you'd think, or you would hope that like the story was hammered down and they wouldn't change it too much, but that kind of doesn't really seem to be the case when we see crazy off-the-wall examples like that. And going back to some of the imagery found in Bergenwith, we've got these like half-transformed statues, also present in the fishing village, or fishing hamlet as well. So that'll be enough for this quick area right here. Right next to the lantern itself, we have another hanged corpse, this time without a head attached to it, and it is covered with like these kind of maggots or like centipede-esque creatures. Maybe they're supposed to be phantasms, I have no real idea. I also think that this depiction is probably like one of the clearest visual ties potentially to like the hunter's mark, It is like one of the closest depictions, I think, in the game. And it might resemble a lot of the tombstone imagery that we find in the Hunter's Dream itself, with the kind of repeated Hunter's Mark's design. Coming into the hamlet itself, we will begin to find fisherman-style enemies. They will wield like harpoons, and they seem to be not necessarily like afflicted with beasthood, but like a variety of it particular to them, which is definitely different because they aren't beasts; they're fish, and so lycanthropy seems to be endemic in like Yarnamites, but that doesn't necessarily mean that like beasthood style transformations only produce werewolves, and that does tie into what we might find in Keenhurst with like not only their bound women, but their lost children of antiquity, the gargoyle looking like dudes, the bloodsuckers, which also kind of resemble insects a little bit, although there are some similarities to like traditional beasts in Keenhurst. But most certainly the style of transformation most definitely seems to depend more on what is already present within a kind of individual, and that might also be why the snakes gain supernatural powers, and or why you can find like graveguard scorpions resembling humans, or like the celestial centipedes having like arcane powers. So it seems most likely to me that whatever is in the blood is able to transform things according to their innermost nature, and I don't think there are certain like strains of blood which cause people to transform into specific types of enemies. It's probably something that's already inside them. Otherwise, I think we'd find like more examples of like Ebrietas-esque monsters, a lot less werewolves, and just probably more similar things to like amygdalae. But overall, I think there's kind of too many separate transformations to say, oh, this is a specific strain of blood for each kind of transformation. It makes more sense to have one common type of blood being able to transform things based on what they already are. And so, going back to the idea of phantasms, looking inside these barrels, we get these almost like eel-like looking creatures. These are most likely phantasms themselves. When you break them, they kind of like fall apart, and they do have their own dedicated models. The reason why I say that these are most likely phantasms is when we do wield that Milkweed rune along with the Kos parasite, which is said to stimulate the phantasms of a lumenwood, there is an attack that we can do which allows us to like spit out this kind of a acidic bile, and like these kind of phantasms will also pop out of the player's model. So I have every reason to believe that these are supposed to depict phantasms as well, since that is what just pops out of like the Milkweed transformed player. As we come into the Fishing Hamlet, we are able to hear some like kind of environmental voices chanting. I'm not sure if we'll be able to make them out clearly, but we can try. Interesting. I did hear a little bit of Brador's bell chiming, but oh, I guess we could have talked to Yamamura. I kind of forgot about that, but we can do that later too. It's not that big a deal. So I wasn't able to make out like the voice of the Baneful Chanters, but I guess they have been uploaded to YouTube, and you can hear what they have to say. I don't remember exactly what they are off the top of my head, unfortunately. Looking into the hamlet itself, there are like these piles of like burnt corpses, many of them decapitated, and they are teeming with the kind of bugs or phantasms that are crawling over them. And so that's just kind of one of the cool things that does go into the storytelling of what happened in this area. So we do gain some more blood vials from these corpses of these fishermen. And then I'm going to do a visceral attack on this guy to just kind of show off what kind of blood is inside these things, because it's a little bit different. Similar to kin, even though they aren't labeled as kin type enemies, but they also do kind of have red blood in themselves as well. So when we finish that off, it is mostly like that the white kind of blood of kin, but when we did initially stab our hand into them, we got like that kind of like blackish mist, which you can find with like any visceral attack on any enemy, and a little bit of the red blood as well. I don't think we can show it off on the player if blood's really covered us quite yet, so unfortunately that's a little bit of a bust, but we'll deal with that for now. We get a pretty high tier damp blood gem, and so this reveals to us that there's an item up above here, but we can't get here quite yet, so there's most likely going to be another way to approach that item, and to be on the lookout for that. And coming up here we have one of the most mystifying enemies in the game. We've got like another kind of Hamlet priest, a little bit different from the other ones, and it will shoot like a bunch of purple skulls to the player, which is similar to what we can find in the Accursed brew. One of the thoughts that I've had about that is they're probably like the spirits of the Fishing Hamlet residents, although they seem to be kind of divorced from blood, because when we attack this guy we will not gain any blood echoes, which is kind of weird. So I'll go ahead and turn the HUD on again to show that off. So we've got these purplish skulls, which look a lot like what we find in the Executioner gloves. And then when we hit it, we will not gain any blood echoes. Just kind of dissipates in that kind of a purplish mist. And that's pretty much that for that guy. So we get some lead elixirs. And around this corner we will find a shark man, which I'm going to try to cheese. So not quite as much damage as I would have liked, but a decent amount. This is one of the most terrifying enemies of the game, one of the most powerful. Because its tracking is extremely good, it does a ton of damage. Oh wow. Messed that up. It has a grab attack where it can pretty much swallow the player. The little guy gave us a lot of vials, which is kind of interesting. So it seems like these guys are probably weak to thrust type damage. And so that's kind of this section of the Hamlet done for. So we're going to go ahead and unlock the shortcut up here. Got a Great One's Wisdom. So it might show that there's something more arcane going on in this area than in many of the other areas we faced so far. And so there is a hole in this roof which does give us access on the inside. And then we will end up being able to loot that kind of item over by the staircase that I was talking about earlier. So So we've got another Fishing Hamlet resident like hanging out on these rafters, one of the very few that'll do that. And it's like wielding like almost like a butcher knife. And you can grab the player and use the knife to kind of hit us like this one is doing to this corpse over here. Then we get the Harrowed set from the corpse that it was kind of mauling over there. Looking at the fishmen a bit closely, looks like they're kind of covered with barnacles. Maybe there's something on their arm that's similar to what like the Kos parasite puts onto the player with the Milkweed rune. Of course, it does have like a bunch of fins on its back to kind of go with that whole fishman motif. And then the ragdoll is not working with us, so maybe the wall, whatever. And then we gain another chunk. So let's go ahead and check out that Harrowed set, which is what Simon is wearing. So, certain church hunters obfuscate their identities and slip into the nooks and crannies of the city. This is the garb that allows these harrowed individuals to go unnoticed. These hunters are keen to early signs of the scourge, serving as a first line of defense against its outbreak. Or perhaps, when the time is ripe, they find signs of the scourge where there are none. It just goes to show the corner beggar is not always who he seems. The Japanese for this is a bit different. I should have looked at the Korean to see if it was similar to the English. I just haven't thought about doing that, and I might try to look at that later now that I'm thinking about it. As far as like the full description goes, instead of like the Harrowed hood, this is more like the disguised set, so it's more like the hood of disguise. Amongst the hunters of the healing church there are ones who lurk the streets, disguising themselves. No one pays any mind to the lowly, this is their attire. As disguised and precautionary hunters, they do not overlook the symptoms of beasthood, or perhaps they undoubtedly discover that which they believe, since all people possess some kind of secret. So it seems like there's probably a bit of a shuffling in the order of the description, because it almost sounds like the final line in English was put on like the first paragraph in the Japanese. So I do think like this isn't probably a case of mistranslation, just because it's so different. Like there's no real way to kind of get this kind of a difference that I would see. So it was probably had different like source material. And so this is something that I talked about a long time ago when we were still in the Cathedral Ward, and we picked up like the Black Church set that this does reveal that there probably were some affiliates of the Healing Church who ended up killing like completely innocent civilians, either because they were projecting their own beasthood onto them, or maybe because they thought they could just get away with it, that they were kind of the untouchables of the Healing Church, and they could kill based on their own discretion. And so this could have been one of the like articles of clothing that reveals that the potential for like the normal Yarnamets to begin to have a grudge against the Healing Church ministers, and why like some of the people of Cathedral Ward seem to like want to keep their heads down and not cause much of a stir if they believe that we're affiliated with the Healing Church, like the woman who's like grateful for the Healing Church and all they do, and the one guy who's very sarcastically saying like, oh, praise the church, the whole damn lot. So I do like what this description really lays out for like the hidden organizations behind the Healing Church and kind of the consequences of their actions. So with that done, we'll proceed into this next portion of the hamlet. We did unlock that shortcut, not that it's like super necessary, but it's kind of nice to have regardless. So this does make it feel like one of the shorter areas of the game, actually. Okay, so this is pretty cool. We can get a pretty good look at these Fishing Hamlet residents. It almost looks like we can kind of start to see its eye, although it might be like covered by these barnacles. Or maybe it's just completely clouded over. It's a little bit hard to make out. So yeah, these guys are covered with tons of barnacles. I think their faces remind me of a certain mob, but I can't think of it. Maybe just like the Bloodsuckers. Maybe slightly reused assets there. It's not too big of a deal. We got the loinclaws. This guy's got like a little bit of a rake, hand rake. And so maybe they don't have like the kind of same wrappings that I was thinking that was on the Kos parasite milkweed hunter. So nonetheless, I do think it's probable that maybe not probable, but possible that the Fishing Hamlet residents have been afflicted by parasites of some sort, whether or not that be like Kos parasites or something different. Either way, though, it's cool. Phased through the stairs there, so we can leave that guy in the bottom for now. So these two guys will deal with the hunter up top. So the second one will throw Molotov cocktails at the player when we're outside and cause some of the urns to explode if you're not wary of where you're going. Alright, so that guy's been alerted to us, and maybe we can cheese it. Oh. I was actually trying to shoot the little urns behind him, but shot him in the face. So yeah, this stuff is really cool. I don't exactly know what it's supposed to represent, whether or not this is just like a fantastic creation of the game, or if it's supposed to be something more related to actual fishing hamlets. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think it's related to C4, because it shouldn't already be like combusted. Well, I guess it could, but yeah, for those who don't know, like C4 was originally used on like a lot of fishing vessels as a kind of a candle that could work in the wet, because if you light it on fire, it will like continue to burn, but what causes it to explode is like the concussive force. So that might be what this is supposed to be similar to. Although I don't think it would just be like in a vial like this or whatever it is, a flask, a filter, whatever it's supposed to be called. And then these little things which hang from the ceilings, I do wonder if these are supposed to be like fish eggs and they're like bioluminescent. That's the kind of feel that I get from them when you look at their depiction in the artwork book, but yeah, I don't really know what these are, and they are really cool to me. Just because, I don't know, just sources of light in kind of pre-industrial civilizations are something that's kind of cool to try to figure out how they work, I guess. Oh, that's not good. So there were a lot more out here than I was expecting for some reason. So yeah, these little guys really aren't too much of a problem. They're kind of like the equivalents of the tiny Yarnamites. And so they take like 2 or 3 hits to kill. We do gain some more oil urns. So yeah, maybe they're just supposed to be the oil urns, but I don't know. Let's look at that. I mean, they're slightly different, but yeah, I'm not sure what to make of that. I definitely don't think it's the oil urn, though. So, coming into this next part of the village, we've got a screaming, harpoon-throwing Hamlet resident, and then we will find like a fish dog, which is actually one of the more scary common enemies in the game. Because they can lunge really quickly, and then they can also like rear up on their back legs and like roar to do a concussive force that will like knock the player down. When you look at the dog's faces, I mean, they're a lot more reminiscent of like maybe like a moray eel or something like that. Certainly not like any dog I've ever seen. I guess they still have their little tails, which is kind of cool, and they got like almost shark-like fins on their backs. But yeah, definitely a very cool enemy and a different take on a common one that we've seen many times over in the FromSoft games. But the one thing that I really did want to like focus on coming into this like next section, this kind of like forested section, when we look at the little do I not have my torch? The like things coming off these trees, we can see that they are extremely similar to like the little icon for the Accursed brew. They seem to be the dismembered heads of the Fishing Hamlet residents, and possibly forcibly searched for eyes on the inside. And so there'll be a few more that we can show off as well. So yeah, this is just a really cool kind of thing, which does relate to that item that we just received. So yeah, that's the dog like roaring on its hind legs. And so I just want to separate it. Before dealing with the harpoon throwers. Ow. Then we do get a few more of those depictions of like the kind of abnormal statues that we would find in Bergenworth. I don't think we find any kind of like messenger statues in this area, which is fine. So one thought that I've had is maybe Bergenworth copped their statues from the Fishing Hamlet, and we don't really get explicit confirmation of that idea. So coming to this next section, we've got like a harpoon thrower. The enemy behind him is another one of those like baneful chanters, which shoots skulls towards the player. And so these are kind of like both lures to kind of make the player drop their guard and try to go after one of these enemies when there's another big old shark boy hidden behind this like little ridge line over here that can really mess us up very easily because it is wielding an anchor, and it deals an excessive amount of damage, honestly. But since I've leveled up my vitality a lot, I might be able to live a little bit more than I normally might. Although it's kind of a crapshoot with the foreign garb set on. Oh no. So, I guess I could have played a bit better to deal with that, but, yeah, it is holding on to that anchor, like I mentioned, and does hit very hard and very fast and often, so probably the hardest kind of a non-boss enemy to face in the game. So it's okay that I died there. The shortcut leading into that area is very close nearby. And we can hear that shark guy over there. Maybe get a better look at them. Ow. Yeah, so we can see that they do kind of have like shark-like features, almost like turtle-like faces or whale-like faces, but at least internally they are called like the Fishman shark version, shark variant. So that is what their inspiration was supposed to come from. Oh no! One moment. Sorry about that. Kinda had to adjust because my dog is trying to get me killed. I don't think she likes me just talking out into the air, especially like this late at night. Like the other night while I was streaming, she was actually just like kind of clawing at the floor, throwing a little hissy fit. So yeah, that attack does remind me a lot of like the beast roar that we can get in the Forbidden Woods. And just like normal dogs, you can shoot them to kind of like stagger them and like knock them down. So they're not like too terrible, but if for whatever reason you do get caught by like the dog and then these the spear throwers, it can lead to a pretty bad time. Okay, I will go ahead and show off that like these guys over here are wielding those kind of like harpoons. So they do actually have like these kind of neat little quivers on their back. Although that doesn't exactly explain how they can spawn an infinite amount of them, we'll just chalk that up to spooky nightmare magic. Damn it, I did the exact same thing. Alright, screw that. I'm sick of that already. So we're going to go ahead and run into Simon. Hopefully despawn it. And turn off our HUD to make things a little bit more cinematic. If not, we'll just choose it with the threaded cane whip. Okay. As we can see, Simon is in a bit of a bad way. Chilling face first on the ground.
Who are you? I'm afraid I've made a botch of things. Oh, I can hear the bell now. The beast-eyed assassin. He's after me. Again. again. It never ends.
So his English lines right there are really close to the Japanese. It's just what's the word? Ordered slightly differently. He says, "Oh, you! Somehow it seems I've made a blunder. I can hear the sound of that damned bell again. That beast-eyed assassin has come to kill me." And he says it either like over and over or like always, always. It never ends, and then he like kind of groans. So that does reveal that Brador, whom we talked to earlier in the playthrough, when he asked if we could hear the toll of the bell, we said no. Simon has been hearing the bell now, and Brador has been the one who's come to kill him and has wounded him mortally and put him in this kind of grievous state. So,
Please, I need you to do something. This village is the true secret. Testament to the old sins. It feeds this hunter's nightmare. Please, bring to an end the horror. So our forefathers sinned. We hunters cannot bear their weight forever. It isn't fair. It just isn't fair.
So Simon dies. We gain the underground cell inner chamber key, which will allow us to confront Jura directly. Why Simon has the key is anybody's guess. We get his bowblade, which is a really cool weapon, and a blood jug, since we are equipped with the Canehurst rune for now. And then obviously that extinguishes his dialogue options as well. When he says that the village is the true secret, testament to the old sins, the Japanese is extremely similar. It just says like the town is the secret, it's the site of sin. But instead of saying like it feeds this hunter's nightmare, he says, and so it became the vessel of the hunter's nightmare. And by vessel in this instance, I kind of made more of an allusion to how I translated the Milkweed rune that does use the same term, like Naedoko, which means like the seedbed, the nursery. So it is like the source of the nightmare, which is kind of like what the English is getting at right there. But I just did want to highlight, for whatever reason, they kind of reused that term. So I think it's supposed to have been connected overall and reinforced just a little bit more. Then he asks us to please bring an end to the horror. So our forefathers sinned. We hunters cannot bear the weight forever. It just isn't fair. It just isn't fair. The Japanese for that is pretty similar. He says, though, even if we're the descendants of sinners, isn't it pathetic, us hunters? Like, aren't we terribly pathetic? I think is what he's trying to get at. And so this does reveal to the player that the Curse of Kos is placed on the children and children like forevermore that the Fishing Hamlet priest was talking about, and that idea is linked directly to the hunters. And so, well, we might not be like biologically the descendants of hunters, like we're the metaphorical children of hunters, and since Gehrman is like that first hunter, that's probably how like Gehrman is ultimately connected to the Curse of Kos and the Orphan of Kos, and we'll discover a bit more of that later on when we fight Kos and get the doll's special line of dialogue pertaining to Gehrman after the fact. So that's it for Simon for now, and so let's go ahead and read his bowblade and then look at that underground cell key. So, choice weapon of Simon, one of the first healing church hunters. Simon despised firearms, and so the church workshop had this specially fashioned to his liking. The large curved blade serves as a bow when transformed. But aside from a few close friends, Simon was scoffed at for his choice of arms, for who would dare face beasts with a measly bow? And so I think the Japanese is similar as well. It mentions that a little bit more specifically that he's known as one of the hunters of the earliest period of the Healing Church. So I think the English does a good job of like getting to that with that. It was one of the first Healing Church hunters. But this does make me wonder if he did have more of a kind of personal connection to Ludwig then, since at least for the Japanese dialogue, he seems to apologize to Ludwig's head after we kill it and tell Ludwig the truth of everything that happened. And since he had his weapon crafted at the Healing Church workshop and was one of the earliest hunters there, it would almost seem to follow that since Ludwig established the Healing Church workshop and was the first Healing Church workshop hunter, or the first Healing Church hunter rather, that the two might have been familiar with each other to some degree. I do like the final paragraph there. It is also really close to the Japanese. And so, perhaps one of the reasons why Simon didn't go blood drunk in the traditional sense of the word is because he was using this bow blade and he was able to fight beasts from a distance, although that didn't seem to save him from his encounters with Brador, although Brador might have just been able to overwhelm him by attacking Simon over and over, according to his dialogue there. So I do think that Simon's bow blade is somewhat similar to what the description of the threaded cane talks about, in that rather than, having it serve as a kind of symbol so that beasthood wouldn't encroach on the soul, it could have been that the intent was so that one wouldn't become engulfed in the blood of beasts as they were fighting them, and so by having that extra bit of distance, it exposed them to less of the blood, and they were less likely to become blood drunk as a result. And I suppose technically you wouldn't even need to drink the blood, just because Gascoigne does mention that like the stench of the blood alone was enough to eventually cause him to turn into a beast. So that might be why Simon is still sane in this hunter's nightmare. And other than that, we would really have no reason to be able to guess as to how he entered this nightmare. It's just kind of a real mystery. And even with this like a little bit of conjecture, like we still really don't know how or why he's still sane in this nightmare. Or even how he came to it. So, oh yeah, the key. Which one was this? Okay. So this is the key to the inner chamber of the cell below the Grand Cathedral. The innermost chamber of the underground cell holds a lone madman. He wears a beast hide and rings a bell that emits no sound. Unending death awaits those who can hear the soundless bell. The Japanese also calls him a madman, and he rings a bell that doesn't hold sound. So yeah, this is almost a one-to-one translation, so very close indeed. And so this does establish that Brador is the one that tolls the soundless bell, and that idea of unending death does become made a bit more clear to us when we continue to encounter him in the various parts of the Fishing Hamlet. We will be able to fight him 3 times in this location, and then once more in the underground cell as well. So that's that for those descriptions, and then we just did pick up another blood drag, not that it really matters. So that's all for there. Even though I probably shouldn't do this, I do want my revenge on the shark guy. After he does get aggroed, or after you unlock that lantern there, he will move his like kind of spawning location to the end of this little pathway here. Maybe because the developers didn't want the shark to immediately aggro on the player as they were leaving and heading towards the lighthouse, because I think he normally would. So I think that's probably why they switched his positioning. And as I pointed out a bit earlier, we do find more like kind of decapitated heads strung from these trees. As for what purpose they would have served beyond just like searching for eyes on the inside, I have no idea. It almost seemed to be like a deterrent against the fishing hamlet. Whether and how they would have like incurred the wrath of Bergenworth, or more specifically like Gehrman or Maria, to cause them to do such a thing is a bit out there. So we did pick up another Great One's Wisdom, which is quite a lot for one area of the game. The only other place that has like more would be by the Brain of Mensis, I believe. And I think aside from that, maybe the only other spot that we've seen it so far was right in front of the Moonside Lake, beneath the Lunarium by the Celestial Centipede. I just did it again. So let's go ahead and try to get revenge, and if we don't, we'll just move on from here. Maybe we could visceral it, actually. That's an interesting view. Oh shit. Too much of a good thing. So yeah, most decidedly a shark man, so this probably wasn't worth it. And I don't know if you can actually visceral this one, or not visceral, but like parry. It's usually easier, not easier, but like maybe safer to just attack it from the sides. Going backwards is always a bad idea against these guys, because their reach is obscene. Whatever, no revenge this time. So fighting those guys one-on-one isn't too terrible, but there is a kind of a traumatizing fight to fight one with an anchor and one without in the little well, where we found the first kind of it didn't teleport me to the other one. Ugh, that's annoying. Did I not ring it? I don't think I did, now that I think about it. Yeah, I didn't. Okay, so we'll deal with that. Got distracted by Simon. Rip. Yeah, it's not that big a deal. I could probably just literally run past everything, doing the old Techno Super Bowl zigzag. The tried and true method for beating a Dark Souls game. Just ignoring everything. Oh. Damn. Double damn. Yeah, so that combo goes on for quite a while. Alright. Whatever. Unlock the next shortcut, only lost like 20-some thousand echoes, which would buy a decent amount of vials, but it's not that big a deal. Like, you could farm those extremely quickly with the pigs at this point in the game. Alright, so I'm not going to worry about that for now, and we'll just proceed through the next section of the Hamlet. So, okay, the shark automatically goes to stand sentry at that other spot, so that's what happens there. This is a kind of lighthouse for the fishing hamlet, and as we approach this little ridge over here, we get this, quite honestly, like this little kind of like beautiful depiction of a grave, tombstone memorial, most likely for the Mother Kos, that we can see the carcass of down in the distance. I don't think we have the angle to show it off very well with the binocular. Okay, there we go. So that is Mother Kos down there. We can't see the orphan, one, because it hasn't been born yet, and two, we're probably too distant anyway, and I don't think even if it's there we'd be able to see the model, although that might be worth looking into. And ahead in the distance we do see that mist-covered celestial body, and then can see that the sea stretches off for the foreseeable distance. Although interestingly enough, from this vantage, we don't see any of the masts for the ships over there. So maybe that's a little bit of a developer oversight, because when you do come closer to it, or like by the Orphan of Kos, you can see them in the distance. So we do hear that tolless bell that Brador rings very clearly. Now that we have fully entered the fishing hamlet, we will encounter the hunter for ourselves in just a moment when we proceed a little bit further. So while we did hear the bell earlier, it was very, very faint. I had like the sound effects cranked up quite a bit, and now the sound effects are pretty low and we're able to hear it clearly. This is Brador. He wields the bloodletter, which he just transformed right there. And he uses the lead elixir, I think, so we can't like stagger him into my what's it called, signature R1 spam. So he's got like Dark Souls 1 poise going for him at this point, at least until it wears off. Damn it. So from that first encounter with Brador, we are able to pick up his bloodied armbands, and I'll look at those right now. Wish I remembered where like everything is in relation to each other on here a bit better. Okay. Just kind of all over the place. I guess they're sorted by like faction or syndicate, but it's really not clear when you're just looking at it directly from here. So these are the bloodied armbands. Brador donned a compatriot's beastly scalp and hide while still moist with blood. Most of the blood stains on this hide were from that day. Pretty clear as far as that goes. Yeah, so the Japanese is very close to that as well. So some people wonder whether or not Brador is the one responsible for having killed Laurence. We don't really know that for sure. That doesn't really seem to match up with like his attire, just because the kind of cleric beast that he probably killed must have been a bit smaller than the ones that we've encountered so far. But that doesn't necessarily disclude it from having been Laurence or anything like that. But whether you choose to believe that or not is more or less on you. I don't think there's enough evidence to say either that it was Laurence or that it wasn't Laurence, so I just don't really have much of an opinion on it personally. So, we can encounter the second fight with Brador below here. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and climb back up and then go around like the front portion of the hamlets. Maybe I should turn my HUD back on, and maybe I don't have any more Molotovs, maybe I do. Okay, this might help a little bit. So these are kind of Fishing Hamlet priests, which are pretty much the exact same model as the one that told us about Bergenworth and their blood-crazed fiends. They'll be able to use like kind of lightning attacks that they can use in conjunction with their like staffs. And I don't really feel like showing these attacks off. I'm sure we'll find them a little bit more further on when we get inside the little fishery that we're about to go into. So that's a good job. There's a lot of like patrolling dogs, which are quite annoying to deal with. So I'll try to get rid of some of them, although that did no damage. Brilliant. So we can actually try to use this to our advantage a little bit by kiting the enemies all towards those like urns over there and setting them on fire with some concussive damage. So that actually worked out pretty well. Sometimes it's pretty easy to get ganged by them and mauled by the dogs. Alright, so that worked out pretty well. So hopefully I just don't screw it up coming into this little hut over here. Although I will double check to see if the ones that are patrolling have been killed, because I don't really want to get ambushed leaving there later. I think I got them. I think they're all together. Alright, brilliant. Alright, so coming into this section of the Fishing Hamlet, we get more of like kind of residential style buildings, although, I mean, maybe not. This is probably just more like a nightmarish depiction of what might have existed in the waking world, because it wouldn't be very practical to have your house underwater. And so we get some more of these urns. But one of the cooler parts about like coming in here quietly and observing the enemies here is they seem to be either like cleansing or like picking through all of these bug-laden corpses, and or they might be like eating things from these bodies. And so my thoughts on that can vary a little bit as to whether or not like they're actually eating from them, which doesn't quite look like it, because like they're holding up their hands as though like they're picking things out of them. So whether or not they're actually like feasting or they're nurturing something inside these bodies is what I would take from that. I kind of think they might be like pulling out the bugs, or like maybe the phantasms on the inside, and they might be like grooming like their children. And the kind of fishery that we're about to enter, it almost seems as though like these fishermen are like harvesting phantasms on the inside of whatever the hell they've got going on in there. So these ones I will try to kite towards these oil urns or whatever they are and cause those to go on fire. Does these have a little bit more health? Oh, maybe not. Maybe I just want an excuse to do that because it's fun to do. So I thought there was one around the corner at some point. Maybe I was misremembering. So it does look like there are like more of the little phantasms around in this area. Some ones may be more dried out. Some may be a bit more fresh. I don't know. When you look at like the pile of corpses over here, we don't really see the same kind of phantasms. We just see like the not so hotly animated like little bugs crawling over them. So this guy, if we did go in through that door over there, would try to ambush us and grab us. There's like little cleaver. Okay, so that's where the other one was, maybe. So this is his grab attack, not that I was trying to show it off. But you can like stop it with the player's hand animation. And then this one over here has like a rake or two. But I think they all drop their items after you kill them. But not too important. And so we get some more chunks. And so it looks like they have maybe been like harvesting these phantasms in these barrels from these corpses. Maybe that's the idea. Not entirely sure there. Alright. Okay, so that's a decent amount of vials still. So let's go ahead and face the second version of Brador. I think he only spawns once you pick up the item in this house, or it's like as soon as you go up the stairs. So this time I'll try to like bum rush him before he can use his lead elixirs and try to kind of soft lock him in my R1 spam. So we get some inconsequential Ken Cold Blood. He'll spawn. Transform his weapon. Off of him, because I did take a hit, but I didn't continue to like get my HP back. So maybe I did show that off last time. Now that I think about it, so maybe that's worth exploring a little bit more. Kind of interesting. So I'm pretty sure his hide says pretty much the same thing as his gloves. And it might be only like his head that has a difference. Right, so the first paragraph is just slightly different. It says, the bloodied hide of a horrible cleric beast, pulled over the back. Without the attached beast hide, this foreign garb wouldn't raise anyone's eyebrows. Brador donned a compatriot's bloody scalp and hide while still moist with blood. Most of the blood stains on this hide were from that day. So yeah, if we do look at the beast hide garb, it is a carbon copy of the the foreign set that we're currently equipped with. I guess this doesn't really have like the gendered form of it like we're currently wearing. So it does look slightly different, especially with like the little cloak, which is what it says it lacks. But where was it? Here we go. It is covered with blood and the hide of a cleric beast, so that does differentiate it. This also does depict that Brador was a foreigner as well, which does reinforce that most, if not all, of the hunters were probably foreigners at some point. And Sundry Saturn makes a very poignant point in that it must smell horribly. So yeah, I don't know how Brador didn't end up going insane if Gascoigne did just from a little bit of blood. Can't imagine what wearing a cleric beast hide would smell like. Yeah, I thought there was something else I wanted to look at. Maybe not. Maybe just trying to keep in mind about the potential lost rallying from fighting Brador's Phantom. So we get some blood vials, which are always nice. Unless you're completely maxed out, even still, kind of nice, because then you can just use some Quicksilver bullets, or emergency bullets. So we can hear the sound of a wandering madness in this building over here, and this is one of the cooler traps in the game. It would normally like go down there, and then as you can see, there's a little annoying fishman over there, and it would throw Molotov cocktails conveniently to catch all of these kind of urns on fire and potentially one-shot the player. Yep, just like that. And if we didn't clear out like that little Hamlet priest that was on the roof over there, it would continue to shoot lightning at us from inside this building as well, which is pretty annoying to deal with. As you would imagine, the Wandering Madness only just has upgrade materials, and at this point we only need the rock anyway. And so we get some bloodstone chunks from that corpse right there, if there was one. I should double check. And some more chunks from the madness as well. So yeah, just more of like a mummied corpse. Although all of them seem to have like maybe this hole on their chest that does kind of line up with what we find on the Orphan of Kos. So that's a little bit interesting, I suppose. I haven't really looked at those too much in detail, I don't think. And so that concludes this little section of the Hamlet as well. Otherwise, we just go back up to the little lighthouse up there. So now I need to remember how to get back up to... Oh yeah, since we came down this way. Gotta climb back up the ladder to head inside, like, the cannery or the fishery. So we do get some like more of those weird bioluminescent orbs, and not all of them are like lit up. The entire like facade of these shacks are covered with barnacles, as I mentioned before. I didn't really show it off too well, but if you try to continue to go that way, you will fall off the map. But you still can see little bits of Yarnum beneath there, and now that we're closer, we can see more of the masts. So that's kind of interesting, but I guess we can't still see them over by the Orphan, so we'll just have to deal with that. When we do look towards this building here, it is actually a building. It's kind of hard to make out. It almost just looks like a somewhat natural landmass, but it just like the artwork book makes it look like a bit clearer, like there's something growing or something kind of weird about like what's covering this thing. It almost looks like melted wax. I don't know if that's supposed to be related to maybe something in the nightmare, or being covered with something related to like fish, or like great ones, or like fishy nightmare monsters. But that is what this entire building is. It's not just like a natural rock formation. It is a building of its own accord, and so that might not be too obvious just at like surface level glances. So coming into this area right here, we've got like a kind of a fishery. I think that's what it's called. I should double check the artwork book at some point to reconfirm, but I'm pretty confident with that. And then it looks like we've got like literal phantasm eggs, or a bream. I think that's what it's called, like covering the floor here. And phantasms as well. And then it also looks like the little residents here are like farming them, literally with their rakes. They're kind of like sifting through all of the little eggs and the shells over there, maybe to sift through and pick the eggs out of the silts or whatever that is. So definitely one of the cooler things about this area. There will be these phantasms like kind of crawling up posts, and then even the candles here are kind of made out of phantasms, and I'll try to show those off in a moment. Oops. Kind of what I meant to do, but I didn't mean to break the thing. So we've got another Hamlet priest. Got some more quicksilver bullets, which we needed just a couple more of. So, as I just mentioned a moment ago, when we look at these candles, they are like little slug phantasms that have a little flame coming out of them. I wonder if the ooze beneath them is supposed to be kind of representative of Mercury. As far as like real life parallels between like Mercury and fish, there are a decent amount of mercury levels in tuna and some other fish, and unfortunately that number has been rising in the recent years. But I mean, all that aside, there was this kind of a tragedy in a Japanese fishing community, and actually in multiple places throughout Japan. But in this one community, they had like a lot of disfigurement in the people, and they didn't exactly know why. They initially called it like cat scratch fever because the cats in the area would begin to act up. And as they continued to like research the causes of this, I think it was like one lone scientist was able to piece together that a local fishery was polluting the nearby water with like mercury, and so this ended up causing like a Minomata disease, I believe that's what it's called if I remember correctly, where it would cause people to become like more hunchbacked. They would lose their faculties, and it was just a very terrible, debilitating kind of illness, and that might have inspired some of the things that we can find in Bloodborne. Like, if I were to compare like one enemy to something similar with the Minomata disease, it'd be like the eye collectors, with the way that they're kind of like hunchbacked over, their limbs kind of curl in on themselves, and all that terrible stuff. If you want to look into it on your own, I would kind of recommend it, because my very brief description wouldn't really do it justice. It is some really sad stuff, though, and was really put into the psyche of the Japanese people once it was kind of exposed, and could have definitely influenced some of the design decisions for the enemies in Bloodborne, and some of the themes as well. So coming into this area, we do see two more Hamlet priests, and they are shooting that lightning attack that I had mentioned that I had mentioned earlier before. So trying to get rid of those guys before we get got. So it's not too bad if you focus on them and just go for the melee kind of attacks. And so with those out of the way, I would like to just get a little bit of a closer look at one of those fishmen who are kind of like farming through what we've got going on in this area. So it's pretty interesting because like it seems like these would be docile if it weren't for the presence of the hunter. They seem to be kind of industrious. They have like maybe not necessarily like an assigned task, but one that they seem to be performing like diligently. So whether or not like this fishing hamlet is a kind of community, even in the nightmare, is interesting to explore. So that's about enough of that, I think. the Screw-Yo Kids. So we get some more blood vials. And so I also do wonder if that is tied to these kind of Nautilus-esque shells that they've got going on. These are probably related to like the kinds of snail women that we can find on the floors below. But whether or not they're related to the kind of like little egg sacs that we find just kind of lying about, I think is also a good possibility. As far as these egg sacs, they kind of also resemble eyes, which is important to consider in conjunction with like slugs and phantasms. It almost looks like they do have like little retinas in them. I don't really know. It wouldn't be too terribly surprising if they were supposed to be evocative of eyes, if not necessarily on the inside, at least eyes on the outside. So we get a couple more farmers over here. How did that second hit miss? It was weird. Perfect. Alright, and so that just kind of loops back up over here. And that kind of concludes the upper portion, although I guess I should show that like you also see like a couple of phantasms on the nets that are hanging from the walls up here. So the Fishing Hamlet is just kind of like positively teeming with these slug-like phantasms. And whether or not these are related to like the Kos parasite, I don't really know. But I don't think that these phantasms necessarily are, but I wouldn't be surprised in the least to find if like these slug women are related to the Kos parasite more specifically. So I think some will be like a little bit docile over here. Or I guess I could just show off the ones like right outside the Kos boss fight. So yeah, when you kill these Nautilus snail women, they will fade to mists. Looks like they bleed a kind of the same stuff that the residents bleed, the fishmen. So it's a little bit hard to show off. Yeah, it seems to be like a mix between like the white and red of the fishmen, which shouldn't be any surprise. I'm probably not going to focus too much more on like the little women, the snail women, just because it gets a little bit tedious. And I don't think there's another item over here. So we just picked up another gem over there. So the gems in this area are of really high quality because this is like the highest level of the game. If you aren't including the Chalice dungeons, but I mean even the highest levels of the Chalice dungeons are probably only a few steps above this, if even that much. But that's probably just because of like the gimmicks of like having to file chalices and reduced HP in those kinds of dungeons. So not all of these shells do have the women. And shortly here we will find a couple of them completely removed from their shells. And those will be scurrying around and they'll be extremely quick with their movements. And so that's one of them right there. That's kind of cool. So we can see what they look like without their shells on. They almost seem to be like almost mermaid-esque kinds of enemies. And then they've got like these weird growths coming out off their backs, maybe. And I don't think there's any winter lanterns quite yet, but we will find Brador over here, which does remind me I might want to turn my HUD back on to see if we can't rally from him. I was trying to get this one. worked out. Alright, poor camera controls, but we'll deal with that. So I might die by accident here, just because I want to see if I can rally off of Brador. Okay, we can. It was only the one. I don't know. It was weird. So then we get the bloody trousers, which should not be too different from what we've already picked up. Alright, so yeah, pretty much exactly the same. They're just bloodied 4-inch trousers, and so this item is a lot easier to show off as being pretty much the same as our 4-inch trousers. Although they don't really look like it, maybe because we're wearing the female version? I don't really know. But whatever, they are very clearly labeled as 4-inch trousers, so we'll just go with it for now. We find some more canoes in these kind of like underground caves. Coming up this area over here, there will be a few more slug women and another annoying chanter. The kind of humanoid skulls, which will deal arcane damage to the player. Jeez, that was not how I envisioned things going, but maybe next time I'll ignore it, because I don't think there's anything super specific over there. I don't even think I saw an item. But we did unlock a shortcut. I don't remember if I specifically pointed it out. So we don't need to go back through the entire little village over there. We can go out through the back of here to the little shortcut door that I opened over here next to the lightning colors. So we get some more bolt blood gems, which is pretty cool. And some quicksilver bullets. Since we already looked at everything up here, we're just going to go back down. And we can also fight Brador again, so he's one of the extremely few enemies that we can fight multiple times. And I think the only like actual NPC hunter that we can fight multiple times, because he seems to summon like a kind of astral projection of himself into this fishing hamlet. So if we continue down that hallway over there, we can fight him again. Although I don't think he gives us more echoes from that. He might, but there's no real reason to do it since we already picked up his trousers. So that one has our blood echoes, which is kind of cool. We hear Brador's bell. Screw that, we don't need to deal with that. That's great. That's a bad idea, isn't it? I thought there was an item behind him. There's one behind me? Where'd it come from? Oh, it's Brador. Damn it. That's what I get for ignoring him, huh? And saying he's inconsequential and all that. Alright. I was so confused, like being stabbed in the back. was weird. It's like my attack got deflected, maybe because of his lead elixir. Alright, so, okay, we do get more echoes from him, so if for whatever reason you wanted to farm echoes off of Brador, one could. And then we pick up some more Kin Coldblood. Some more Madman's Knowledge. And then we get to the next shortcut area over here by calling down this kind of elevator. Before we do that, may as well go to the bottom of this little shaft to pick up the item at the bottom of it. So there's no enemies down here. We get a Cursed Kin Hunter's Damp Blood Gem. I'll go ahead and look at some of the blood gems that we've gotten, but for the most part, none of the descriptions are really going to be any different. It's just all of their effects, which is very consistent with everything we've seen on these playthroughs. And then I'm not going to worry about Kos quite yet, or the Winter Lanterns. I might save the Winter Lanterns for after dealing with Kos and getting the rakuyo after that as well. I might give Kos a few tries, and if we don't kill him, then I might give the Winter Lanterns a try, and before coming to an end for this stream. But may as well go back to the dream, level up, maybe buy a vial or two. Oh, and I guess we need to show off. No, I should go to the Winter Lanterns first, and then get that blood rock over towards that location. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna do.
Welcome, buddy. Very well,
I feel like we finally have enough HP, so I'll go start investing in strength, just because that'll give me the most upgrade to my damage at this point.
Farewell.
So a decent stockpile right there. And then let's go back. So this is the lighthouse hut. And so how the Winter Lanterns come to be in this area is also a mystery that I would like to know myself. If we do take the idea that the nightmares are kind of layered and staggered on top of each other, it could be that they might have eventually wandered down from the Nightmare of Mensis, since we do see some in the Nightmare of Mensis most obviously, and we find just a few in the night. That if the Nightmare Frontier actually is over the Fishing Hamlet, like the kind of little masts might suggest, then it might be possible that the Winter Lanterns came into here from that location, although there doesn't really seem to be a direct connection. As we can hear the ghastly, horrible songs of these Winter Lanterns, I'm probably going to get frenzied just from them glancing at me, which is quite annoying. I need to lower my insight. But, geez. Hopefully we'll be able to bait out a grab and a visceral. Alright, we're going to iframe through that frenzy, which is fantastic. Quicksilver bullets. May as well loot these guys over here. Tempering Damp Blood Gem, Kin Coldblood. Just need to do that once more. Oh, it's too slow, I'm dead. GG. Thanks for believing. Yep, couldn't use the sedative in time. So is most certainly a smart thing to go ahead and level up right before there anyway. Because certainly my item set is not helping with the frenzy resistance, but that's okay. I may as well turn the HUD off just for some footage material. Now that I know I've got my sedatives equipped, and I just need to rely on good timing. Oh, damn it. I've only got like 5,000. As far as footage goes, that's pretty stellar. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I think I've figured out the trick for pairing them pretty well. But the second frenzy did get me, I think, for sure. Oh yeah, I should ignore these ones. Maybe not. Kite them and then chase the priest jerk with his damn lightning and his goofy little walk. Right. And his little friend up there. Oh no, he's back over there in the corner, I remember now. I should have just picked up the damn blood rock. Get me out. Okay, we can work with this. Alright, and so as we can kind of see now, despite like the Fishing Hamlet priest dudes, we're just kind of like walking over a ton of like the little phantasms that I've been constantly mentioning in this area. That was weird. And so, since we didn't pick one up in the Nightmare of Mensis quite yet, because it's by the brain, which I'm saving for after we kill Murgo's wet nurse, we will pick up the blood rock, which can upgrade our weapon to the +10 weapon from this thing right here. Just a kind of a normal looking mummy. And only the second lootable one in the game. I think you can farm a few of them in the chalices. But other than that, once you do fight Murgo's wet nurse, you are able to buy them from the insight shop for 60 insight each, which is certainly good for dealing with the winter lanterns. But that's kind of a bygone point for us at this stage of the game. I could have used that before coming down here, but we made it work out. Alright, and so that's pretty much everything in the Fishing Hamlet, other than the two shark guys. Got 21,000 echoes. Screw it. Yeah, let's try to kill the shark guys first, and then pick up the rakuyo before giving the orphan a try or two, or three, if it goes really well. So one of the more cheesy ways to deal with the two shark guys down there is to use the shaman bone blade to have like the shark that doesn't have weapons to deal with the shark with the anchor. So this ties into the well at the very start of the level. This shark up here can't be interacted with in any meaningful way. So you have to first encounter that guy, and once you get it down to maybe like 2/3 or like half of its health, maybe only a third left, this shark will drop down and they will both have aggro on the player. So if you use a shaman bone blade, you can have one attack the other to kind of do the player's work for them. Even so, it's still not an easy fight. This is one of the banes of most players' existences, and for all intents and purposes is just kind of like an uncredited boss fight in terms of difficulty. But hopefully we won't have that many difficulties. Just have to play smart and safe and take our distances when we can. So let's go ahead and get wrecked. Might have been too early with my bone blade there. Oh nope, here we go. He should be aggro on the other shark over there, since he's just completely walking away now. And the effects worn off. Okay, there we go. Damn it. I got too excited without the health bars. That's fine, that was a pretty decent run. Trying to decide if I want to go to it this way or the other way. Let's go back, but I'll call the elevator up. Trying to deal with the third shark. So we can still hear the winter lanterns up there. Ow. Range on that, holy crap. Ow. Dodge is a little bit slow. Doing worse this time. There we go, finally. so we just screwed off over there. What? There we go. Nope. Okay. There we go. That's exactly what we needed. Alright. The rakuyo. Thank you, Sundry, for the GGs. Appreciate that. So let's go ahead and look at that description. Just as a translation note for like the name of the rakuyo, the kanji for it is like a falling leaf. So I don't know if that has like another kind of a homophone for another word. I never thought to look into it a little bit further, so it might. I just didn't think about that. So this is the hunter weapon wielded by Lady Maria of the Astral Clock Tower. A trick sword originated in the same country as the Canehurst Chikage, only this sword feeds not off blood, but instead demands great dexterity. Lady Maria was fond of this aspect of the rakuyo, as she frowned upon blood blades, despite being a distant relative of the queen. But one day she abandoned her beloved rakuyo, casting it into a dark well when she could stomach its presence no longer. A couple notes about this rakuyo would be that its description does reveal to us that Lady Maria is most likely related to Queen Annalise, not necessarily like Queen Yarnum, although I suppose that's the possibility. I mean, I wouldn't really entertain that, but it's just vague enough that I suppose if somebody wanted to stretch it that way, they could. I mean, but that aside, when it talks about distant relative of the queen, I guess you could say if the people of Canehurst are like the descendants of Thurmuru, you could rationalize it that way. But as far as the Japanese goes, it's a bit differently worded in that she's more like a collateral relative of Queen Annalise, and by collateral relative, it's a little bit hard to describe. I don't really think we use this term so much in modern English anymore. But if you had like a clan of a family, like the clan that's supposed to be, or like the immediate family that would be like the head of the clan, that would be, of course, like Queen Annalise as the monarch of Canehurst. And so a collateral relative would be somebody that's related not directly, so they aren't necessarily sisters, but there's a good chance that like Maria is a cousin of Queen Annalise. They might have shared the same grandparent or something like that. It's just like not a direct relation from the immediate family perspective. So as far as like a kind of like a weeby anime reference, if you consider like Hinata Hyuga to be like the true descendant of the Hyuga clan in Naruto, like Neji Hyuga as her like cousin and guardian and savior would be like part of like the lesser house, and whose sworn duty is to protect the main head of the clan. So that might be what's going on with Maria and Annalise, although I don't really think it has that kind of overtones so much as like what we would find in Naruto. As far as like the final paragraph right there, it says that she abandoned her beloved rakuyo, casting it in a dark well when she could stomach its presence no longer. The Japanese is a little bit softer, maybe, in that it says, however, one day the girl discarded her beloved rakuyo into a dark well due to mere tender-heartedness. So maybe saying it's a softer description isn't quite accurate, but I think the way that it's written paints Maria as being somewhat foolish, because it uses like tada kokoro yowaki, and so it's like really kind of emphasizing that it's just tender-heartedness, or like literally like weak-heartedness that she did it. And so that might also tie into the like idea of Jura being tender-hearted, and thus he was a fool. So I don't think being soft-hearted or tender-hearted is looked favorably upon in Bloodborne. So I think that was about it. Let me just double check right here. Oh, yeah, yeah. So when it talks about Maria not being fond of blades of blood, uh, I'm a little bit conflicted. I tend to go against the kind of grain of common thought that she didn't like blades of blood because she didn't like blood or bloodshed in general. The way that I read it is, if the Chikage literally consumes blood to use blood blades, that probably wouldn't have meshed very well with Maria's natural fighting style of using her own blood to create her own blood blades. So why would she use something that would kind of consume her resources? That might have been a bit counterintuitive. She probably didn't need the Chikage to use that kind of based attacks. So I don't necessarily think Maria was always tenderhearted because she was a hunter and a disciple of Gehrman to some degree. She probably had a change of heart after the events of the Fishing Hamlet, is how I would personally read it. Although, to be fair, I mean, that is my personal interpretation of things. You're more than welcome to disagree with that, and it's perfectly fine to have these kind of disagreements over topics like this. I'm pretty sure that was it at this point. So, yeah. When it talks about dexterity in this context, it's really just talking about like the skill stat. And in Dark Souls, skill was pretty much called dexterity there. So we're gonna go back to the Hunter's Dream. I don't think we can level up. Maybe we can. And then we'll replenish all our items, upgrade our weapon, maybe change our gems, and then go fight the Orphan once or twice. And then tomorrow we probably should end up finishing this lore through. Now let's go upgrade the weapon first. What am I trying to repair? So we finally are able to upgrade that weapon. We can see that the scaling on it does go up quite a lot of points, 31 points. So a really big deal to get the threaded cane to its highest level to benefit off that scaling. With the blood gems, I'm not going to be using so much thrust against the Orphan. Damn it. Nothing good. Oh, wait. Nope. Okay. Not terribly surprised right there. Let me just double check my echoes. Probably not enough to level up, but with some cold blood we should be able to get to it.
Welcome home. Very well, let me.
So 50 is the soft cap, so we're not really getting many bonuses from there. And 2 points isn't a ton, but I don't really think we'll use a lot of the endurance against the Orphan, so let's just go with the strength anyway.
Farewell, good hunter.
I tend to have an easier time against the Orphan than I do Laurence, although watch that not be the case this time around. Alright, so now we should be good to go ahead and hopefully finish off this Fishing Hamlet area. there's actually a lot to say about the Orphan of Kos. So as we do approach the kind of arena for the Orphan of Kos, we do find a lot of these snail women prostrated, kind of praying towards most likely the corpse of Mother Kos. Whether or not these snail women know about the existence of the orphan, I guess we could say that they probably do, just because it seems like the Fishing Hamlet priest does. But who really knows with how things work in the nightmare? And so many people have wondered whether or not like the orphan only exists in the nightmare, or whether or not or maybe I should rephrase that, whether the orphan only exists in the nightmare, or whether or not this is kind of a representation of events which really happened in the waking world. We don't fully know. I tend to think that this is probably the representation of some events which occurred in the waking world, and there might have been a physical body of the Orphan of Kos, and it probably was stillbirthed and died, and well, didn't like fully die, because like since it is an infant great one, its consciousness is likely persisted in this nightmare, but so worth thinking about for sure. So when we do get up close to these kind of snail women, we can kind of see that there's like this weird tendril-like thing wrapped around their arms, kind of coming out of their backs. Their legs seem to be fused together, so they don't entirely seem to be humanoid, or fully human at least. When we compare them to like Mother Kos herself, there might be some similarities there. They have like kind of humanoid faces and humanoid hands. The very like pale light color. Maybe we can hear them praying actually. So let's go ahead and turn this up. So yeah, just a little bit too faint to make out over the ambient sound effects, maybe. They're probably not even saying like anything super relevant. So, whether or not these are like clones of Kos or her children is up for debate as well. Or whether or not these were the members of the Fishing Hamlet who transformed either due to her influence, or maybe because they ended up inadvertently eating like Kos parasites, or ended up drinking her blood for their own, is another matter that's open for debate. I'm not sure what I personally believe about that. I think there's a good chance that these were like the Fishing Hamlet residents, but I also think it might have been likely that they kind of ate Kos parasites, whether or not from like consuming the corpse of Kos, which I don't think that the Hamlet residents would have done themselves, because they seem to have revered her. But if those parasites started to infect the kind of local varieties of fish which they would have been fishing up and eating and consuming for themselves, that I could believe, and that might have been what ended up causing them to become so transfigured. That would kind of align with what I think the Fishing Hamlet priest was talking about. In damning Bergenworth for being blood-crazed fiends. It would seem a little bit hypocritical for the Fishing Hamlet residents to damn Bergenworth for being blood-crazed when, if they were consuming blood themselves. Although, I mean, that's still not completely set in stone, and they could have very well still imbibed blood and wanted to curse Bergenworth, because Bergenworth ended up killing them, so they had a different level of craze with the blood, so they might have not have been at the point where they would kill for it, whereas Bergenworth was. But as far as everything goes with like Maria, I just realized we didn't look at her set in the insight shop. That would have given us a little bit more insight with everything with Gehrman. It's most likely that Gehrman may have branched out a little bit too far of his own accord in searching the Hamlet resident skulls for eyes on the inside, because of the insatiability of his curious mania. And so there is a little bit of a difference in the English and Japanese description for that item. So, all that being said, let's go ahead and try to deal with the Orphan of Kos. And if we kill it really quickly, we'll go ahead and look at Maria set in the dream as well. And hopefully I'll remember to get some good footage of the doll talking about Gehrman after defeating the Orphan. So, coming into the arena itself, we do see the course of Mother Kos, just kind of beached on the shore over here, directly underneath like this celestial body, which is covered with that kind of mist. When we approach it, the Orphan will be kind of born from her dead body, and that might tie into some other like Japanese ideas of like children born to mothers who've died in childbirth or died before they were able to give birth of their own accord, might have had some like supernatural powers, but that's not like super common in a lot of Japanese media. It's just like a specific kind of folktale. There was a kind of like anime about it. It was a bit more lighthearted, but it did have a few adaptations. I can't remember exactly what it was called. It's like Monster Keitaro or KKK, something along those lines. I tend to forget what it's called, so forgive me for that. The Orphan will be the kind of a shape of a wizened old man, and wizened means like aged. So most children, when they're born, are not born in the shape of an old man by any means. So this does reveal what the Hamlet priest was talking about. He was talking about this Orphan over here. Let's go ahead and initiate the fight, and I'll just talk a bit about its lore as we continue. Oh, and before I forget, after we do initiate that cutscene, the Orphan of Kos will be looking towards that kind of a sun-like body in the sky before the fight starts. So just be on the lookout for that. So as the boss fight starts, we do gain some more ambient insight. We see that the Orphan himself is looking up towards the sky. When he gets born, right there, his final cry is pretty much the exact same as Gehrman's when he asks both Master Willem and Laurence to free him from the dream. So there is probably a thematic connection between Gehrman and the Orphan of Kos. Whether or not its shape is modeled after Gehrman's is also something we don't really know. I think there's a good potential for that reading, for sure. I don't dislike it, although I could see why others wouldn't choose to go for that interpretation. As we see, the boss name plate is already available, so technically the fight has started, even though he's not hostile, because he's kind of mesmerized by that body in the sky right there. As far as its name goes, it's called the Orphan of Kos in English, which isn't too terribly surprising. The Japanese, for its name, uses a kind of archaic set of characters. And so, normally Orphan in modern Japanese is called Koji. And for the characters that they use Ishi. And it just kind of happens that Ishi is also what they call like blood echoes, and it also ties into how the orphan can be considered like the will and the echoes of Mother Kos, I think. So I do think it was very deliberate that the developers called the Orphan of Kos the Ishi of Kos as opposed to Koji, and it was very deliberately done in my opinion, because they call the orphanage building like the Koji Inn. So they had the opportunity to call him the Koji of Kos, but they chose Ishi instead, in my opinion, to connect to the idea of both blood echoes and ambition and all that good stuff. Missed that visceral attack. I shouldn't have dodged backwards. I knew that as soon as I did it. Gegege no Kitaro. Yes, thank you very much. Did you just look that up, Saturn, or did you know that? So, he just phased into second form? I think this happened to me once before. I don't remember if it was on stream or not, so... yeah, this will actually be a kind of cool opportunity to show off his weapon. If he's actually stuck. Oh, you just looked it up. It looks funny. Yeah, I don't really know too much about it. I think I watched like one episode, but it's definitely not as macabre as like Bloodborne, but I really don't know how to kind of describe it. It's more of like a comedy than something like super dark and super serious. But yeah, looking at the Orphan of Kos, especially in its second phase, it seems to grow like wings out of its back. The weapon that it's wielding is most likely his like placenta that he dragged out of the corpse of the Mother Kos. As we look at it, it's kind of covered with like a bunch of like maybe like blood vessels or tumors that seem to be bubbling as though they're still alive and still working. And it has like a kind of almost like metal edge to it at the very outer edge there. Some people think it also kind of resembles that of like a waning blood gem, so maybe I can show that off right now actually, which is kind of interesting to do in the middle of the fight. So yeah, this might be a pretty good kind of a comparison. I'm not super convinced by that, but maybe if you look at like the Cursed variant, it is a bit reminiscent of that, but definitely one of FromSoft's like more bizarre and mystifying and grotesque and horrifying enemies. Definitely one of its coolest bosses by all means. Sundry says, Orphan's actually a mischievous scamp like Kitaro. Yeah. So thank you for fact-checking that on the fly, just because I couldn't remember that name. So yeah, if people are kind of interested in that kind of mythos, there's also some other like more scholarly written articles about children born after the mother died. So let's go ahead and see if the orphan isn't stuck in its AI. If it is, that's kind of funny. I'm always considering... Okay, no, this is way too good to pass up. Oh my goodness. Talk about the lucky lore run. Not that I'm trying to kill it, but we can look at how many damn toes it has. Miyazaki's coveted foot lore. It has 6 toes. 7? 6? 7. I can't count just because it's kind of clipped. Oh man, I'm so happy. I'm so excited about this. This is ridiculous. So yeah, we can see it's got the figure of an aged old man. I have no idea how this has happened. The foot lore expands. Orphan has 7 toes confirmed. Oh my man. Oh, maybe he has more on this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 toes each foot. Very Miyazaki. So he also has like the kind of a weird growths encircling his arms. That seems to almost be connected to this like umbilical cord in his back, although it doesn't like fully line up. It just kind of comes out of nowhere. Does its head continue to track me through this? Yeah. Kinda. This is ridiculous. I'm afraid like attacking him is going to reset his AI too. Let's look at this thing up close. This is awesome. Oh man, unfortunately I don't think I can actually like take pictures. So maybe just get a pretty good scan of him. YouTube thumbnail material right here, right? I don't need to do that. So these things also kind of remind me of like the little pustules on like the brain of Mensis. Seems to be like bubbling of their own accord. He does have like this little gaping hole in his body, which is most likely attached to his umbilical cord. Does he have eyes, or are they just kind of like crusted over? I don't think I can get further behind him to really check that out. Sundry says, take your time. It looks like that glitch that speedrunners do. You triggered it accidentally. Blessed stream. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have been able to reproduce that. Probably even if I had known about that. It's just really cool stuff. So is he like permalocked like this then? If so, that kind of sucks that we can't show him off, like doing lightning off the corpse, but still cool stuff. He's definitely only got 5 fingers. I almost said 5 hands, which is certainly not the case. And so yeah, he's also able to like rip chunks of this off and to do like those kind of arcane attacks with those like little projectiles. Let's go ahead and like look at his wings a little bit closer. They don't seem to be like scales. They're almost like very smooth, almost like an eel or something like that. I'm not really trying to look up its butt, but it's kind of what ends up happening. Alright, so this might be enough of this. You think he remains stationary even if I attack. Do I have my full HP? Let's be a little bit safer here. Okay, that's interesting. Even if I visceral? Okay, I was so scared for a second. Yeah, so this is pretty wild. Okay, so we'll probably... That's something. It does look like he kind of has eyes, although they're like super dark gray. I don't think he'd have like eyeballs. Oh, maybe he does. He's moving his head too much. Okay, so that's probably enough of that. Oh, does his wings have physics? Or do his wings have physics? They seem to. Oh, that's wild. So that was a kind of anticlimactic, although extremely climactic, ending to the Orphan of Kos all the same. Kos, that kind of black sprite does appear from the body of the corpse of Mother Kos right here. And then when you kill it, we will get another cutscene, which has like the Hamlet priest talking over everything. And we'll see that in just a moment here. So this is Mother Kos herself. She does kind of resemble the snail woman in that she has like a kind of humanoid face and humanoid hands, although these seem to be a lot more bloated and covered with scales. Her body also seems to be covered with scales a little bit more clearly than compared to like the Orphan. And I also think her body does kind of resemble that of one of the crawlers that we can find in the Nightmare Frontier. As we come to the wizened black sprite, we can see that does resemble the Orphan of Kos, more like its spiritual form. It is connected to Mother Kos, kind of like where the Orphan was born from, so this very likely is related to the Orphan itself. And so, now that we have killed the boss, I am going to point out that once we attack this black mist right here, that the disc in the sky will go away once we've killed it. So I'm just trying to find a good angle for this. Maybe over here. I don't know.
Sweet child of Kos, returned to the ocean. A bottomless curse, a bottomless sea, accepting of all that there is and can be.
So as we just pointed out, killing that little sprite causes the celestial disc in the sky to go away, which probably represented that curse of Mother Kos right there. And once we did dispel that sprite, it said Nightmare Slain. And then that might also tie into Gehrman, the first hunter. So when we go back into the Hunter's Dream, we will get a little bit of a special dialogue from the doll herself. So let's go ahead and do that first before examining the Kos parasite.
Oh, good hunter. I can hear Gehrman sleeping. On any other night, he'd be restless. But on this night, he sounds so very calm. Perhaps something has eased his suffering.
So that's kind of the more explicit connection between the Orphan of Kos and Gehrman. That is the rest of the doll's dialogue that relates to the two of them and all of her kind of unique dialogue for the game. So just talking to her now, she'll just talk about the ancient echoes that we got from Ram.
Good hunter, your presence somehow soothes. I sense the ancient echoes. They course your veins.
So that's
Very
pretty much
well,
that. We are able to level. Not that we need to at this point anymore, for sure. Ending up at around level 90.
Farewell, good.
And so, yeah, that's pretty much it for the DLC. All we have left is to finish up the final few bosses of the base game and look at the Mensis Brain. So before we do that, let's go ahead and look at that Kos Parasite and then maybe equip it with the Milkweed rune. Go back to the Fishing Hamlet to just kind of show off that the Milkweed rune is kind of related to the phantasms that we find in there. Just to kind of tie everything back together. So, Kos Parasite. When the carcass of Kos washed up on the coast, its insides were teeming with tiny parasites unlike any found in humans. This atypical weapon can only be clasped tight and swung, but a Kos parasite is said to stimulate phantasms inhabiting a lumenwood. So, as far as the Japanese goes, I think it's pretty similar. Although rather than saying that they're unlike that the parasites are unlike any found in humans, it just says they are not a thing that resides in humans. So, while they are kind of similar at a surface glance, the Japanese is a bit clearer in that, while they haven't necessarily been found in humans yet, it's that they don't reside in humans, so humans don't seem to be the kind of a suitable environment for these Kos parasites to grow in. So you either need like the lumenwood, which it's talking about right here, or perhaps something else. And as it does say in English, one can just be gripped and used for striking, though it cannot be called a weapon. However, it is said this bug stimulates the phantasms of a seedbed, and of course a seedbed is pretty much, I don't know why they called it Illuminwood in this context, but it's the exact same kanji that they used for the Milkweed rune, Naidoka, which means like a seed bed or a nursery or a vessel, depending on how metaphorically you want to get with the description. So actually, let's go ahead and equip this. Oh, I don't have the insight, or not the insight, but the arcane. So we won't go ahead and do that after all. I might just switch characters to do that, just to show that off. Or actually, I might just do that next stream to just kind of highlight some of the odds and ends that we haven't quite covered yet. So once again, thank everybody for stopping by for these streams. We're going for about 3 hours every day at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tomorrow should be the concluding episode for this lore through. So once again, thank you for the continued support and all the comments that you guys leave. And hopefully we will start to produce some of the more lore essays on my YouTube channel in the near future. If you guys have more lore questions or anything like that, go ahead and join the Discord. And I guess that's about it. Once again, thank everybody for stopping by and have a good night.